Chapter 36-56. On the island. Gong Xiaoying stood by the port and looked at the raging fire on the sea. The mercenaries were flying helicopters in the sky to extinguish the fire. The waves were strong and the wind swept up the flames, causing a heat wave to hit them. A man in a suit rushed over to Gong Xiaoying. "Master Gong, the wind is too strong here. Why don't we go back first?" Gong Xiaoying nodded but did not say anything. He turned around and returned to the huge castle. When he entered, he saw the mercenaries kneeling on the ground with solemn and ashamed expressions. He glanced at them and saw that they had different degrees of injuries, but they were all injured on their thighs. He had already guessed what was going on, so he didn't show much surprise on his face. "Are the two kids hurt?" he suddenly asked coldly. The group shook their heads. How would they dare to hurt little Li Chen, and how could they bear to hurt Lisa? Gong Xiaoying asked sternly again, "Are you sure? Little young master is not hurt. We did not shoot." When Gong Xiaoying heard this, his expression softened. One of the mercenaries asked carefully, "Master Gong, do we still want to chase after them?" "No need." Gong Xiaoying waved his hand in annoyance. "Let's retreat." "Yes." Everyone nodded, but they remained kneeling on the ground. Gong Xiaoying did not leave, so they did not dare to stand up. Gong Xiaoying glanced at them and turned back to look at the endless sea through the floor-to-ceiling window. He felt a little desolate. Forget it. Forget it. Let the little guy return to his family. Now, he was sober. He was enlightened. He knew that some people could not be kept. Even if he could keep them, he might not be able to keep their hearts. Gong Xiaoying closed his eyes and walked towards the escalator. When he disappeared from sight, one of the mercenaries asked carefully, "I think Master Gong did not intend to stop little young master from leaving." If Gong Xiaoying wanted to stop him, this huge castle would undoubtedly be a cage on the sea. No matter how capable you are, you can forget about escaping. Why were Xiao Yichen and Lisa able to board the yacht so easily? There were keys on the yacht, and it was also equipped with all kinds of sophisticated weapons and radio communication systems. There was even an abundance of food and fuel. Gong Xiaoying must have secretly instructed his subordinates to prepare this. Gong Xiaoying was a prideful person. How could he tell Xiao Yichen that he was letting go and that he could leave? On the surface, he appeared calm and collected, but in reality, when faced with Xiao Yichen, how could he be so cold-hearted? Perhaps it was because he had personally witnessed Xiao Yichen's longing for Yun Shishir that even hypnotism could not seal his memories. Such a persistent heart had finally moved him. Gong Xiaoying also understood that some feelings could not be separated. Even though he was reluctant, he had no choice but to let go. Hurricane Group. This was not Xiao Yichen's home, nor was it Yu Yu's home, nor was it Yun Shishir's home. It will take 2 months to reach the port of the capital from here. Xiao Yichen was shocked. Lisa said, "Ashland Island is indeed very far from the capital. Moreover, this is a yacht, not Master Jie's ship. It won't be fast. But we only have a month's worth of food. Then we'll go to France." Chapter 36-57. Lisa pointed at the map and said, "It's not far from France. We should be able to reach it in about a month." As she said this, she patted Xiao Yichen's shoulder heavily and said, "You have to be a little more frugal. The food reserves will last us for 2 months. I've calculated that if we only eat 4 pieces of bread a day, we can last for 2 months. Water is not a problem." 4 pieces of bread a day. Xiao Yichen complained incessantly, "Are you trying to starve me to death? There's no other way. That's all we have. If you're hungry, just drink more water." Xiao Yichen looked as if he had a deep grudge against her. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Lisa continued, 2 months' worth of food reserves is already sufficient, okay? We're escaping from a disaster, not on vacation. You have to be clear about your priorities. Lisa, Xiao Yichen suddenly stared at her, his eyes twinkling. Lisa cautiously took half a step back and narrowed her eyes. What? You've changed. How have I changed? Xiao Yichen said, in the past, you were a woman of few words. Now, you speak more than before. Lisa was stunned. She turned her head away awkwardly and did not say another word. She was ignoring him. Xiao Yichen muttered in his heart, I'm telling the truth. In the past, Lisa was like a block of wood. Other than you, she ignored everyone else. Oh right. Hurry up and contact my uncle. Tell him to be ready to receive me at any time. Xiao Yichen said and felt a little troubled. There should be a radio on this yacht, right? Yeah. Lisa turned on the radio and connected to Gongjie's satellite radio. She waited for a long time, but no one picked up. Xiao Yichen frowned. What's going on? Don't tell me she's pregnant. Lisa muttered to herself. She opened the door of the equipment and checked the radio line and signal. Everything was normal. Being able to connect and send out a message to the outside world meant that there was no problem. Maybe he didn't bring his satellite phone with him. Lisa said to Xiao Yichen. Xiao Yichen nodded. What should we do now? The yacht travels day and night, so two people need to take turns. Lisa said to him, go and rest first. I'll drive until night time. You can take over for me at night. Xiao Yichen immediately said, I'm not tired. Go and rest first. Lisa didn't allow him to explain. Her tone was like an order. Xiao Yichen had no choice but to return to the cabin. The cabin was divided into 6 parts. 2 of them were bedrooms with a 1.5-meter-long bed, a sofa, a wine cabinet, a TV, a coffee table. Although the Sparrow was small, it had all the vital organs. However, this yacht wasn't small. It was worth hundreds of millions of yuan. Although it wasn't as big as the one Gong Jie gave him, it was still very big. Xiao Yichen lay down on the bed and fell asleep before he knew it. Halfway through, Lisa walked into the bedroom to take a look. Seeing that Xiao Yichen was still sound asleep, she guessed that he hadn't been sleeping well for the past few days. Seeing that he had kicked the blanket to one side, she pursed her lips helplessly. She walked to the bedside and gently covered him with the blanket. Just as she was about to get up, little Yichen, who was still asleep, suddenly reached out and grabbed her wrist tightly. Lisa, he called her name silently. Lisa felt that his hand was very hot. She wanted to retract her hand, but Xiao Yichen held it so tightly that she couldn't break free. Chapter 36:58. Lisa, hearing him call her name, Lisa quieted down and frowned. She didn't know if this guy was really asleep or just pretending to be asleep. She leaned closer to him suspiciously and heard Xiao Yichen mumbling in his sleep, "Come home with me." Lisa's pupils dilated slightly. She looked at little Yichen in a daze. The words that came out of his mouth were indistinct, but every word made her heart beat wildly. "Let's go home together," as Xiao Yichen mumbled in his sleep, he held her hand tightly as if it was a precious treasure. Lisa actually forgot to retract her hand. Only after a long time had passed did she suddenly wake up. She immediately pulled her hand back, only to feel that it was burning hot. It was as if she had been soaked in lava. Lisa's heart was in a mess. She turned around abruptly and left the room without looking at Xiao Yichen again. Growing up, she had seen many deaths. She had been reborn from the blood clots of death. She had stepped on countless corpses of her companions to survive until now. She had never dreamed of having a family. However, this guy was now saying to her, "Lisa, let's go home together." Her heart was beating wildly all of a sudden. Lisa returned to the cockpit. The yacht was on autopilot. She cancelled the autopilot and started to control the yacht according to the route. According to the schedule, she was supposed to wake Mu Yichen up. However, seeing that he was sleeping so soundly, she didn't have the heart to wake him up. Let him sleep for a while more. She could still hold on for one more night. Lisa looked at the sea quietly. However, at this moment, her heart was like the calm sea. Underneath the surface, there were turbulent waves. When Xiao Yichen woke up, he sat up on the bed and looked out the window. The sky was already turning bright. It was already dawn. It was already dawn. He was a little stunned. Was it already the next morning? Why didn't Lisa wake him up? What happened? Burning with anxiety, he got out of bed and rushed to the cockpit with his messy hair. However, he saw Lisa sitting on the side. The yacht was on autopilot. She was drinking milk and eating hardtack. When she heard footsteps, she turned around and was surprised to see Mu Yichen walking out with his messy hair. "You're awake. Why didn't you wake me up?" "Oh, I saw that you were sleeping so soundly that I couldn't wake you up no matter how hard I tried, so I just didn't bother." As Lisa spoke, she took another bite of the hardtack. The hardtack was very hard, and when he bit into it, crunching sounds could be heard. Xiao Yichen looked at the dashboard and clicked on the yacht's autopilot mode. Lisa explained, "The yacht is set to autopilot mode, but someone has to guard it to prevent any accidents." He ruffled his hair in frustration and said to Lisa, "Go and rest." "Okay, wait for me to finish eating." Lisa finished her hardtack and stood up. She said to him, "I'm going to sleep. Wake me up in the evening." Xiao Yichen immediately said, "I won't wake you up. You can sleep a little longer. It's okay." Lisa turned around and smiled at him. "My biological clock is very punctual. I'll wake up on my own at that time." With that, she left the cockpit. Xiao Yichen was still stunned on the spot. Lisa rarely smiled. However, she had just smiled at him. Chapter 36:59. Xiao Yichen remained rooted to the ground. Lisa rarely smiled. However, she had smiled at him just now. Xiao Yichen's heart thumped wildly. He pretended to be calm as he sat in his seat. He was still in a daze. So, Lisa's smile was so beautiful. While Xiao Yichen was still in a daze, the door opened again. Lisa stood at the door. Seeing him in a daze, she frowned and asked, "Are you still asleep?" "No." Xiao Yichen immediately explained, I'm thinking about something." After a pause, he asked in confusion, "Do you have any other instructions?" "I've already contacted Master Jia through the radio. He said that he would send people to the nearest port to receive us as soon as possible." As Lisa spoke, she pointed at the blinking red dot on the dashboard and said, "I've turned on the radar coordinates. Remember, don't touch that green button." The radar coordinates would constantly send signals to Gong Jia's system so that they could be located in time. Xiao Yichen nodded. "Okay, don't worry. I won't touch it." "Okay." Lisa looked at him deeply. Without saying anything else, she turned around and closed the door. Xiao Yichen stood by the dashboard. Thinking back to the smile Lisa had shown him just now, he smiled contentedly. "Lisa," she smiled at him. Xiao Yichen took out an energy biscuit and a bottle of milk from the food storage box. He opened the packaging and took a bite. The biscuit had been compressed. Even though it was a small biscuit, it could replenish 10 times the energy of a normal biscuit and give him a strong sense of fullness. He drank a mouthful of milk and thought back to his dream. In his dream, he had brought Lisa home and lived a normal life. He had actually smiled foolishly. "What? Xiao Jie, is what you said true?" In the living room, Yun Shishir's eyes widened in shock. She couldn't believe it. Gong Jie nodded. He glanced at Mu Yaja and said with certainty, "Lisa just called me. She said that she and Xiao Yichen have left Ashland Island and are now on a yacht." "Lisa?" Yun Shishir looked confused. "Who is Lisa?" "Lisa is Yu Yu's bodyguard. She was the reason why we could successfully switch Yu Yu back." Yun Shishir nodded in understanding. "I see." She thought for a moment and asked worriedly, "Then how did they come back? Was there an escort?" At this point, a worried look appeared on his face. "No, they came back from Ashland Island alone." When Mu Yaja heard this, he couldn't help but feel suspicious. He asked worriedly. How could it be just the two of them? Isn't that very dangerous? There were too many uncertainties at sea. It was hard to imagine if the two of them could successfully and safely arrive on a yacht without anyone's help. Gong Jia immediately comforted him. I may not believe others, but I definitely believe in Lisa. She's not an ordinary child. You can rest assured. Child? Lisa is a child. Yun Shishir became even more uneasy. 2 children. Gong Jia, how can I rest assured with 2 children? What if something happens? His lips curled into a confident smile. Sis, trust me, okay? I've already sent people to help them. I'll be there as soon as possible to meet up with the 2 little guys. Chapter 3660. Lisa. Lisa. When Lisa woke up in a daze, she saw Xiao Yichen's warm smile. She sat up nervously, leaned against the wall, and stared at him a little defensively. What are you doing? She looked out of the window and woke up. She rubbed her eyes and asked, Did you change the guard? No. Xiao Yichen winked at her mysteriously. I caught something good. Lisa followed Xiao Yichen to the deck. He took out a charcoal stove from somewhere and lit it up. Then, he set up a barbed wire net. 2 huge fish lay on top of it. As the meat was cooked, it emitted a tempting aroma. Fish? Yes. I don't know what kind of fish it is, but I think the meat of the fish should be edible. Lisa frowned. Indeed, not only was the meat of the fish fresh and tender, but it was also suitable for grilling. However, some sea fishes were poisonous and inedible. Lisa walked over and identified it. She often sailed on the sea, so she recognized it at a glance. This is a salmon. Salmon? Xiao Yichen didn't know what a salmon was. He was only concerned about one thing. Can it be eaten? Of course it can be eaten. Idiot. Lisa scolded him and sat down on the deck. She couldn't help but ask curiously, How did you catch this fish? I flipped over the fishing net and casually fished it out. He happened to encounter a school of fish on the calm surface of the sea and casually fished it out. Lisa looked at the various seasonings next to the stove and asked suspiciously, Where did these things come from? From the storage room. Xiao Yichen smiled proudly. I wanted to check if there was anything in the storage room, but I smelled pepper. In the cabinet, I found these seasonings and the barbed wire net. Since there are these things, there must be something to grill, right? I looked around again and found this stove in the corner. Lisa listened for a long time and only came to a realization. That was, the potential of a foodie was indeed limitless. However, it was all thanks to the little glutton Mu Yichen that they were able to eat at sea. Lisa sat down and glanced at the fish. She quickly turned it over, otherwise, it would have been burnt. Xiao Yichen brushed the oil again. Just by smelling the fragrance, he felt a little restless. Lisa complained, Why didn't you catch more fish when you encountered a school of fish? I caught a few, but the rest ran away. Xiao Yichen said helplessly, I'm not a big fish. It's already a miracle that I was able to catch 2 of them. This size is considered small among the salmons. Xiao Yichen did not have a way out. Moreover, if you fry the fish fillet, it will be more tender. You seem to have a lot of experience. Lisa raised her eyebrows and said, I didn't know about these tools. Otherwise, I would have caught a school of fish for you to see. Xiao Yichen's self-esteem was inevitably hurt. He felt that Lisa was omnipotent. Lisa glanced at him and explained, When I was training on the island, I often caught fish. Oh. Xiao Yichen glanced at her and suddenly said curiously, Actually, I have a question, but I don't know if I should ask. Huh? Chapter 3661. You said that you were born as an assassin and received a lot of cruel training. Are you the only one? Yes. Then, Xiao Yichen hesitated. Don't you feel lonely if you're the only one? Lisa was taken aback and looked at him in surprise. This was the first time in her life that someone had asked her such a question. Lonely? Xiao Yichen nodded and looked at her seriously. If you're alone, there's no one to talk to, no one to play with, won't you feel lonely? As she said this, she couldn't help but recall that when they were young, Mu Yazhe was busy. At that time, Mu Wanru was not close to him either. He liked to lock himself in his little world and talk to the toys, the walls, and even the air. He would imagine other people sitting in front of him and talking to themselves. He enjoyed himself. It was really lonely to be alone. When Lisa heard this, she frowned and remained silent for a long time. Just when Xiao Yichen thought that she was going to avoid the question, she said in a low voice, "At that time, I didn't know what loneliness was. I only knew that I had to stay until the end. I was the only one who had a chance to survive." She turned her head and asked with the same seriousness, "Have you killed anyone before?" Xiao Yichen's heart sank. He shook his head. I don't think so." "Oh." Lisa lowered her head and looked at the grilled fish on the barbed wire fence. She said calmly, "I killed someone who I used to think of as my best friend with my own hands." She had never mentioned this to anyone before. Lisa stared at the sizzling fish, but her tone was calm. "At that time, there were only 2 children and me left in the base camp. We were locked in the same cage. I told him that even if we were to die together, I wouldn't do anything to him. He said the same thing to me. At that time, only 1 out of 100 children had the chance to walk out of the cage. When there were only 10 children left, the other 8 children did not dare to do anything to her. Hence, they were prepared to kill the boy. She finally stood up, picked up the knife, and killed the 8 children. She walked to him covered in blood, sat down, and said to him, 'Only 1 child can walk out of here. Either you die, or I die. But I won't kill you. What about you? Will you kill me?' The boy shook his head firmly and said, 'I won't.' Then, Lisa held his hand and smiled at him. 'Even if we die together, don't betray me, okay?' The boy smiled back at her. That night, she slept very lightly. She only felt a black shadow walking to her side. Even with her eyes closed, she could feel the dazzling light of the dagger under the moonlight. She opened her eyes and almost subconsciously flipped her hand over to pin the person under her. When she saw his face clearly, she fell to the wall in disappointment. It was him. They had clearly agreed that even if they were to die together, they would not betray each other. However, he chose to betray him and decided to make a move on her in her sleep. The boy nervously held the dagger and stood up, trembling all over. Tears and snot flowed down his face. "I had no choice. I had no choice. I didn't want to kill you, but I didn't want to die even more." Chapter 3662. Lisa narrowed her eyes and pulled out a sharp dagger from her waist belt. She swung it at the nearest person. Ah! Bang bang bang. Gunshots rang out in the basement. However, in less than 10 seconds, the basement returned to its usual deathly silence. The other crew members crept into the storeroom. They were very vigilant as they hugged their guns. When they broke through the door earlier, they kept their guns at a distance and scanned every corner with vigilance. As soon as they entered the room, the fishy smell on their bodies, as well as the sour smell of having drifted on the sea for a month without bathing, immediately filled the air. Seeing that there was no one in the storeroom, the group of people put away their guns and began rummaging through the cabinets. The pirates were here for the treasure. Seeing that there was no one on the ship, their first reaction was probably to escape on a small speedboat. Therefore, they quickly searched for any valuables left on the yacht. The door of the cabinet suddenly opened. Everyone immediately became alert. Before they could raise their guns, an unknown grenade was suddenly thrown out. The group of people looked at each other and glanced at each other curiously. However, the flash grenade exploded all of a sudden. Poof! In such a small room, the flash grenade exploded all of a sudden. The strong sense of dazzling light blinded everyone's eyes. Shit! It's a grenade. While the group of people were wailing like ghosts and howling like wolves, Mui Chen, who was wearing a pair of goggles, flipped out of the cabinet with an M4A1. He knelt on one knee and fired a series of shots at the crowd. Da-da-da. In an instant, a large number of corpses fell on the floor. Mui Chen stood up and walked over. He examined the corpses one by one. Those who were still moving, their eyeballs were shot directly in between their eyebrows. The other people in the cabins on the second floor heard the gunshots from the storeroom on the first floor. They looked at each other and immediately rushed to the storeroom. They waved the smoke away and walked in to take a look. There was a river of blood. What's going on? The group of people obviously did not expect such an unforeseen event. Just as they were panicking, the ceiling of the storage room was suddenly pulled open, and a Gatling gun poked in. Lisa crouched on top of the roof and aimed her Gatling gun at the cabin. She fired at the cabin. Da-da-da-da. A few minutes later, the world returned to silence. After meeting with Xiao Chen, Lisa carefully stepped into the room. She held the dagger in her hand and examined the corpse on the floor. At that moment, the smell of blood in the room was extremely thick. The two of them looked at each other. After confirming that all the pirates had been killed, Lisa and Xiao Chen put away their daggers and left the cabin, locking the door behind them. At night, Xiao Chen and Lisa dragged all the corpses to the deck. After making sure that there was no one left behind, they threw the corpses into the sea. Lisa wore a diving suit and dived into the sea. After cleaning up all the corpses on the propeller, Lisa climbed onto the yacht and gestured to the cockpit. Xiao Chen pushed the starting lever and the propeller was successfully restored. She then heaved a sigh of relief. Using the radio, Lisa sent out a distress signal. Looking at the route map, she saw that the storm was still ongoing. She had a headache and held her forehead. I wonder when the storm will pass. Chapter 3663. Lisa shook her head. No, I won't. Not all of the corpses of the pirates were thrown into the sea. One of them was left hanging by the railing as a warning to the pirates that if they dared to block the way, they would definitely die. Just as Xiao Chen was in a daze, he suddenly heard a sound. Upon hearing the sound, Lisa immediately sat up and threw herself in front of the screen. She took a look and exclaimed in surprise, "Someone responded to my radio. There's a ship not far from us. You sent a radio just now. Were you asking for help?" "Yes. But with our fuel, food, and drinking water, we should be able to last until we reach our destination." Lisa turned around and suddenly asked, "Then have you considered whether our small yacht will have enough emergency equipment if we encounter a storm on such a big sea?" Xiao Chen was suddenly speechless. "Moreover, there are only two of us. Our abilities are limited. Even though we have enough fuel and food and water, if we encounter another storm on the sea, the fuel will be depleted very quickly and we may not have enough. Also, the yacht's speed is limited." Xiao Chen nodded. "Okay, I understand. I'll listen to you." "Okay." Lisa immediately sent a distress signal to a passing ship. The other party replied that they were willing to help. Lisa's confidence was greatly boosted. After confirming the location of the radar, she steered the yacht closer to the ship. For the past few hours, they had been on high alert and did not relax at all. Hence, it was inevitable that they were a little tired. Mui Chen, in particular, was exhausted. Lisa immediately urged him, "Go and sleep for a while. I'll keep watch." Xiao Chen asked worriedly, "Aren't you tired?" "I'm tired, but I can hold on." Lisa smiled. "Don't worry, I can hold on. You, on the other hand, should get some rest. Who knows, you might take over after a short nap." "Okay." Xiao Chen didn't waste any time, but he didn't return to his room. Instead, he laid down in the cockpit, leaned against the wall, hugged his arms, and fell asleep very quickly. When he woke up again, he was shaken awake by Lisa. "Mui Chen, wake up." He opened his eyes in a daze and saw Lisa's nervous expression. "What's wrong?" He sat up warily, thinking that something had happened again. Lisa said to him, "Do you still remember the ship that we sent a distress signal to?" Right now, he's about 1,000 meters away from us. But Lisa, on the other hand, began to hesitate. Mui Chen saw her cold expression and could not help but worry. "What's wrong? Is there a problem?" "That's the Gu family's cargo ship." Xiao Chen was stunned. There was no deep hatred between the Mu family and the Gu family. However, Lisa did. Previously, her subordinates had killed all the men that Gu Jinglian had brought to North Africa. There were so many blood debts. Now, they had bumped into each other head-on. She didn't dare to board the ship. Xiao Chen took the binoculars from her and looked in the direction that Lisa was pointing at. Indeed, it was a huge cargo ship. The ship's bow was engraved with a huge Werther symbol. That was the Gu family's factory in North Africa. Chapter 3664. There's no room for hesitation. Mui Chen said, "Although Gu Jinglian is ruthless, he will never lay a hand on children." Lisa was a little skeptical. "Are you sure?" Mui Chen patted his chest and assured her, "Yes. I'm sure." He still believed in Gu Jinglian's character. He would never make things difficult for the two children. Half an hour later, Lisa regretted her decision. After boarding the boat, Gu Jinglian saw Mui Chen and Lisa. Without a word, he ordered his men to handcuff the two of them and tie them to the pillar of the boat. Gu Jinglian stood in front of them condescendingly. His cold gaze swept over every inch of their bodies, as though they were being dismembered. Lisa asked angrily, "Didn't you say that Gu Jinglian wouldn't lay a hand on children?" Mui Chen was so embarrassed that the corners of his lips twitched violently. Gu Jinglian was wearing a black uniform. When he heard Lisa's words, he squatted down calmly and sized them up expressionlessly. "Oh. Who was the one who said that I wouldn't make things difficult for children?" As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly raised his wrist. In his hand was a desert eagle. He aimed it between Mui Chen's eyebrows. "Gong Fan, what goes around comes around. I didn't expect that you would fall into my hands." When Mui Chen heard this, he shuddered. He hurriedly said, "Young Master Gu, you've misunderstood. My name is Mui Chen, not Yu. When Gu Jinglian heard this, he raised his eyebrows but did not think much of it. "What makes you think that I'll believe you? Yu and I are twins. The two of us look very similar, but there are definitely differences. For example, I'm a little taller, a little more skilled, and a little smarter. Yu is a little more stupid, a little more eccentric, and a little more annoying." Lisa rolled her eyes at Mui Chen. At the critical moment, he really didn't feel guilty about selling out his own brother. "You scammed me just like that." He was a maniac who cheated his brother. Mui Chen seemed to have guessed what she was thinking. He turned his head and said angrily, "That's right. Why should you pay for his debt?" Gu Jinglian thought that this little guy was a little interesting. He didn't really want to kill the two children. Just as Mui Chen had said, no matter how ruthless Gu Jinglian was, he would not lay his hands on the two children. This was not his style of doing things. However, he had been so miserably tricked by the hurricane in North Africa that he could not let this matter rest. Furthermore, Gu Jinglian really thought that Mui Chen was Yun Tianyu, so he wanted to tease him. Seeing Gu Jinglian's cold gaze on him, Mui Chen immediately said, "Master Gu, are you sure you want to kill us? My daddy is not to be trifled with. If you dare to do anything and something happens to me, my daddy will be very angry. My mommy will also fight it out with you." Gu Jinglian could not help but ask coldly, "You said that you're good at fighting. Let's have a spar. If you're really that good, I'll let you off and bring you back to the capital safe and sound. What do you think? Spar with you?" Gu Jinglian smiled gracefully. "I don't fight." Xiao Chen, Lisa could not help asking, "Who will you spar with, then?" Gu Jinglian stood up and snapped his fingers. Han Ji. Chapter 3665. Xiao Yichen gulped. To be honest, if you were to fight with such a big guy, would his head be smashed into pieces with a single punch? Gu Jinglian smiled. If you admit defeat, I'll throw you both back into the sea. Lisa immediately said, I'll fight him. Gu Jinglian smiled and said, if you fight, it'll be considered as admitting defeat. He was well aware of Lisa's capabilities. Even though she was small in stature, she would definitely have the upper hand against Han Ji. However, this was Mu Yichen. He had long heard that Mu Yaja had 2 sons. Among them, the eldest was the most skilled. He would like to experience it for himself. After a pause, he turned to look at Mu Yichen and said meaningfully, as a man, surely you wouldn't let your girl fight, right? Lisa's face turned red when she heard this. She stammered, what are you talking about? Who's his girl? Xiao Yichen said disdainfully, do you think I'm afraid? Untie me and I'll fight him. When Gu Jinglian heard this, he couldn't help but look at him in a different light. He gestured with his eyes and his subordinate immediately walked over to untie Mu Yichen. Mu Yichen stood up and moved his wrists and restraints a little before he got into a fighting stance. Lisa saw this and said worriedly, Mu Yichen, don't force yourself. I'll be fine, don't worry. Mu Yichen snorted coldly and turned to look at Han Ji. He gestured provocatively at him with his finger and said, go ahead. Han Ji saluted with his fists clenched. When he clenched his fists, his sandbag-sized fists immediately produced a crisp and powerful sound. Xiao Yichen didn't back down at all. He got into a fighting stance. His stance was a standard fighting stance. Gu Jinglian retreated to one side. With a cigarette in his mouth, he watched the fight coldly. Ha! Han Ji hollered, raised his fist, and pounced on Mu Yichen like a wolf. His 1.95-meter tall figure was like Mount Tai as he leaned over. Like a ghost, little Yichen nimbly dodged the attack and appeared behind him. With a leap, he aimed a horizontal kick at the man's ribs. With his back facing Xiao Yichen, Han Ji grabbed onto his leg tightly. Xiao Yichen was shocked. He wanted to break free, but there was no chance for him to do so. In a flash, he bounced up from the ground and swept his other leg towards Han Ji's face like a whirlwind. Bang! A kick. Xiao Yichen's flying kick landed squarely on Han Ji's face and he couldn't help but stumble back a few meters. Xiao Yichen nimbly landed on the ground, but his left knee went soft. He immediately realized that Han Ji had used too much strength to hold onto him, and that his ankle was cramping. Without sufficient exercise, it was indeed a bit difficult to face them head-on. Han Ji was also pushed back a few steps. He didn't expect the little guy, who was only waist-high, to have such explosive strength. His jaw almost dislocated. Han Ji spat out a mouthful of blood. His teeth were obviously loosened. He wiped away the traces of blood at the corner of his mouth and got into a fighting stance again. You're not bad either. Mu Yichen said with a smile. His words were undoubtedly a form of provocation. Han Ji smiled and taunted back, little guy, you're not bad. Xiao Yichen didn't humbly admit defeat. He said coldly, ha. It's not too late to admit defeat now. Chapter 3666. As Han Ji spoke, he clenched his fists tightly and glared at Xiao Yichen. His eyes were like those of a venomous snake. Xiao Yichen lightly scratched the tip of his nose and charged at him. The two of them exchanged punches with each other. Their fists were not to be trifled with. They were solid fists. When their fists landed on the wall almost cracked and a layer of dust fell off. However, the most shocking thing was that Xiao Yichen did not show any signs of weakness. Instead, he seemed to be getting more and more courageous. He kept throwing punches at Han Ji's vital points. Compared to Han Ji, although he was slimmer, he had the advantage in terms of agility. He was as nimble as a cat. Gradually, Mu Yichen understood what was going on. He could not use too many fancy moves against Han Ji. Hence, he gave up on horizontal kicks, flying kicks, and high kicks. Regardless of whether he threw punches or kicks, he relied on his brute strength. Xiao Yichen's strength was far beyond Han Ji's expectations. Who would have thought that a mere child would actually have such great capabilities? Han Ji was not soft either. He threw a punch at Xiao Yichen's shoulder. Xiao Yichen did not dodge. Instead, he clenched his fist and met Han Ji's fist head-on. The two of them clashed and separated. Xiao Yichen and Han Ji both took a few steps back. Their faces showed signs of pain. At that moment, Lisa's heart trembled. She looked anxiously at Xiao Yichen. She saw that the bones in Xiao Yichen's fist were slightly red. Then, she looked at Han Ji's hand and saw that a few bones had been broken. Lisa turned pale with fright. Han Ji's fist was as big as a red bean bun. In the end, he did not expect that little Yichen would take his punch head-on and even break his bones. Lisa suddenly felt that Xiao Yichen's strength was too frightening. He had hidden his strength well. Perhaps in terms of skill, she was slightly better than Xiao Yichen, but in terms of strength, there was a huge difference. Han Ji's fighting skills weren't too complicated, but each of his punches and kicks were very solid. However, neither Han Ji nor Gu Jinglian expected that Xiao Yichen's tiny body would contain such immense power. Unbelievable. Han Ji's hand was injured and a few of his bones were broken, but he didn't care. He stood up and prepared to continue fighting. Gu Jinglian suddenly said, "Stand down." Young Master Gu, Han Ji looked nervously at Gu Jinglian, only to see him sizing up Mu Yichen with admiration. Han Ji immediately emphasized, "I haven't lost yet." Losing to a child was a great humiliation. Han Ji refused to admit that he had lost to Xiao Yichen. Gu Jinglian said coldly, "According to the rules, you've already lost." Getting injured meant losing. Moreover, Xiao Yichen was still a child. Gu Jinglian knew in his heart that after such a contest, if he hadn't stopped the fight, Han Ji would have been beaten to a pulp by Xiao Yichen. Forget it. The contest would end here. Gu Jinglian walked in front of Mu Yichen and smiled. "Mu Yichen, you've really opened my eyes." Xiao Yichen looked up at him and asked curiously, "Did I win?" "Yes, you won." "Then, since I won, you can't go back on your promise." Gu Jinglian said disdainfully, "I never go back on my words." Chapter 3667. He cut the ropes and unlocked the handcuffs at the same time. Lisa regained her freedom and immediately walked over to Xiao Yichen. She asked worriedly, "Are you okay?" Xiao Yichen looked at Lisa and saw that she was pretending to be calm, but she could not hide the anxiety in her eyes. His heart warmed and he immediately smiled. "Yeah, I'm fine." She was worried about him. He did not expect that Lisa, who was usually so cold, would take the initiative to show concern for others. "That big guy hit you so hard. Are you sure you're okay?" Lisa was in disbelief. Han Ji had punched him so many times. Did he not feel any pain or itch? She had seen Han Ji punch Xiao Yichen's back and abdomen a few times. The force of those punches was enough to break a steel plate, let alone a human body. Xiao Yichen was a mortal after all. Lisa did not believe that he was completely fine. "I'm really fine. Don't worry, I won't force myself." The little guy smiled warmly. So, Lisa was skeptical, but she still had some doubts. "Even if your bones weren't broken and your organs weren't damaged, I don't believe that you don't have any bruises after being hit by such a heavy punch." Xiao Yichen calmly lifted his shirt and revealed his muscular abdomen. Lisa took a look and was surprised to find that there was not a single bruise. It was too amazing. Lisa's eyes were filled with shock. How could this be? "I learned Chinese martial arts." Ancient martial arts were Chinese martial arts, and Chinese martial arts was also a term used to refer to martial arts. However, in the current traditional sense, Chinese martial arts and martial arts were very different. Martial arts practitioners strengthened the body, while Chinese martial arts practitioners protected the family and defended the country. The so-called Chinese martial arts were martial arts that only killed the enemy and did not perform. For example, Tai Chi was one of the Chinese martial arts. However, Tai Chi had been prejudiced by many people. They thought that Tai Chi could be practiced by any ordinary person. Other than strengthening the body, it had no other use. Now, Tai Chi had become a form of performance. However, the martial arts of Tai Chi did not have so many mysterious and strange moves. His attacks were nothing more than fast, accurate, and ruthless. If he could kill in one move, he would never use two. Taking someone's life was only a matter of a snap of a finger. His leg and hand strength came from practicing the horse stance. The horse stance was the foundation of many sections. The horse stance of each sect was similar, but there were differences. There were only two purposes for practicing the horse stance. One was to train the strength of the legs, and the other was to train internal energy, which was the so-called gathering of qi. Therefore, although the horse stance seemed simple, it was one of the most basic skills in martial arts. In Chinese martial arts, there was a saying, start by standing in the stance for 3 years. If one did not practice martial arts, it would be for naught. If one only had a set of moves without a solid foundation, it would only be for show and not practical. Xiao Yichen had a master when he was 3 years old and practiced the horse stance every day. In the beginning, he found it boring and thought that the horse stance was too easy. However, the horse stance became more and more difficult with each passing day. Later on, when little Yichen was in the horse stance, his master magically placed a basin of charcoal under his crotch. Following that, he took 2 hanging stones from the side, each weighing about 5 kilograms, and hung them on his arms just like that. Whenever he moved, his clothes would be set on fire. Chapter 36-68. He had to maintain this stance for the time it takes to burn a joss stick. The time it takes to burn a joss stick. He had to maintain this posture for the entire time it takes to burn a joss stick. Xiao Yichen's expression was bitter and vengeful. Would he still be alive after he was done? Furthermore, there was another rule. The stone was not allowed to fall to the ground. If it did, he would be punished for the time it takes to burn a joss stick. The stone was only a finger's length away from the ground. If he let his guard down, he would collide with the ground. Hence, Xiao Yichen spent the time it takes to burn 4 joss sticks on the first day. That night, he could not even walk smoothly. With this kind of training, coupled with Xiao Yichen's extraordinary talent, his strength was unparalleled even though he was not tall. Mu Yaja sometimes suspected that his son had extraordinary strength. If the car broke down when they went out to play, this guy would probably be able to lift the car with his bare hands even without a jack. Lisa heard this and was so shocked that she could not close her mouth. However, even though Xiao Yichen had said so, Lisa was still worried. She grabbed his hand and reached out to touch Xiao Yichen's abdomen gently. These were the places where Han Ji had hit him just now. She felt around and confirmed that the 2 punches didn't hurt any of his organs or bones. It was the luckiest of the luckiest. However, Xiao Yichen was so embarrassed by her touch that he took a few steps back. Blushing, he looked at her. You. Why are you touching me? Seeing that his little face was completely red, Lisa explained in a speechless manner, I'm checking your body to see if there's anything wrong with it. Xiao Yichen's face turned even redder. He said awkwardly, you should be wondering if his hand was broken when he punched me. It's fine. You don't have to worry about me. Lisa looked at him speechlessly. After a long silence, she suddenly said, I'm going to send a message to Master Jie. With that, she walked around him and left. Xiao Yichen then realized that he had to contact his uncle as soon as possible and tell him that they were on the Gu family's boat. Gu Jinglian had promised him that he would bring them back to the capital safe and sound. According to Lisa, the speed of this cargo ship was twice as fast as the yacht. They would reach the capital in about 10 days. Meanwhile, when Gong Jie received the news that Xiao Yichen and Lisa had boarded the rescue boat and were on their way back to the capital, he heaved a sigh of relief. However, when he heard that the 2 of them were on Gu Jinglian's boat, he was shocked. Gong Jia was utterly confused. The hurricane group had taken away the Gu family's land in North Africa. Now that they had met, could it be, Gu Jinglian must be making things difficult for these two little guys. Uncle, let me tell you, I've defeated a super strong big guy. This person is Gu Jinglian's very capable bodyguard. He lost to me. Xiao Yichen was so proud of himself when he mentioned this. Gong Jia was not in the mood to listen to this. He was only happy to see that they were safe. Lisa said, "We were hijacked by pirates not long ago." Hijacked? Yes, near the waters of Somalia. They boarded the boat? Yes. Then, Gong Jia asked worriedly, "Are you guys hurt?" No. Lisa smiled coldly. Xiao Yichen and I killed all the people who boarded the boat. Not a single one was left. Gong Jia, why did he feel a chill down his spine and a chill run down his spine? Chapter 3669. Xiao Yichen had spent the past few days on the cruise ship counting on his fingers. He wholeheartedly hoped that the day he could reunite with his family would come soon. He really missed home. Lisa knew that Xiao Yichen missed home all the time. Especially when he was under hypnosis and the hypnosis had failed. How strong must his willpower have been to resist such a terrifying hypnosis technique? Xiao Yichen had done what Yu couldn't. She couldn't help but look at him in a different light. After 2 weeks of sailing, they finally reached home. When Xiao Yichen found out that they would reach the harbor in the capital the next morning, he was over the moon. That night, he couldn't sleep. He didn't know how long he had been away from home. He also didn't know if Yu had gotten along well with Mommy and Daddy and if he had regained his memory after returning to the Mu family. In the middle of the night, Lisa woke up to find that the bed next to hers was empty. Xiao Yichen wasn't there. She got up and went to the deck. She saw Xiao Yichen leaning against the railing and looking out at the horizon. The harbor in the capital was on the other side. That was the direction of his home. His home. Xiao Yichen kept looking in that direction. Lisa walked over and teased him, "What's wrong? You're so excited that you can't sleep because you're going home?" Xiao Yichen didn't answer. Instead, he said in a trembling voice, "Lisa, do you know? In 6 hours, I'll be able to see Mommy." Lisa suddenly fell silent. It's not just Mommy. There's also Daddy, Yu Yueyao. A blissful smile appeared on Xiao Yichen's face as he spoke. Lisa was affected by his emotions and smiled from the bottom of her heart. "Are you that homesick?" "Yes." Lisa also put her arm on the railing and asked curiously, "Mu Yichen, what does it feel like to have a home?" Mu Yichen was a little surprised that Lisa would ask such a question. To the Lisa of the past, this question was incomparably childish. But now, she actually took the initiative to ask. He was a little curious, but he was also seriously considering how to answer this question. "I can't describe it, but it feels very warm." Warmth? Lisa could not help but laugh. It was a vague answer. Xiao Yichen said, "I love it when Mommy reads me bedtime stories. I love lying in her arms and listening to her gentle voice. My Mommy's voice is the best voice in the world. Listening to her voice, I was able to fall asleep peacefully. Speaking of which, I can't remember all the stories she told me, but I really like that feeling. I never had any nightmares again when I listened to her voice while I slept." Lisa was a little entranced as she listened. When Xiao Yichen suddenly stopped, she asked curiously, "What else?" Also, Xiao Yichen smiled and said, "Every time I made a mistake, or Yu pushed the blame to me, you know that. Yu is my younger brother, so I have to give in to him. But even if Mommy is angry, she won't be fierce to me. If she's really sad, she'll definitely be so angry that she'll cry. I'm so afraid of seeing her sad, so I keep telling myself that I can't make her cry. Otherwise, I'll be committing a huge sin. Okay, also, my daddy warned me before." Chapter 3670. Ha 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 ha. Lisa was amused by his animated expression. Your daddy is so adorable. My daddy. Him. He's all right. In Xiao Yichen's mind, Mu Yazhe was not adorable at all. It was too scary to use the word adorable to describe him. My daddy is very fierce. When I was young, I was afraid of him. He always had a serious expression on his face and didn't smile much. At that time, I wondered how there could be such a difficult person in the world. After pausing for a moment, Xiao Yichen suddenly smiled and continued, later on, I understood that it wasn't that he didn't love me, he just didn't know how to express it. After he got together with Mommy, he gradually learned how to get along with me. As Lisa listened, she gently yawned. Lisa, to be honest, I feel that it's such a pity. A pity? Xiao Yichen turned around and gazed deeply at her. When you were born, there was only killing in your world. Without daddy to hug you and mommy to dote on you, you even missed out on your childhood. Don't you feel lonely without a childhood? Little Yichen lamented, if you had a mommy like me, who reads you bedtime stories, dresses you in pretty dresses, and dotes on you like the apple of her eye, you'd surely be blissful. Lisa's expression was slightly startled. Xiao Yichen also realized that his words might have hurt her. His expression darkened and he said, sorry. Did I say something I shouldn't have? Lisa, however, turned to smile. No. There was a long silence between the two children. Lisa suddenly sighed and said, it's just that you seem to have said something wrong. Lisa looked up at Xiao Yichen and said slowly, how can I miss out on something that I've never had? Xiao Yichen was stunned. For a moment, he was speechless. I've never had that thing, so you said that I missed out on it and felt that it was a pity. However, I don't feel that way. It's just that. She was just a little envious after hearing Xiao Yichen say so much. Just as Xiao Yichen had said, if she had a mother like you and Xiao Yichen, she would definitely be very happy. Just because you didn't have it in the past doesn't mean you won't in the future. Xiao Yichen immediately patted his chest and said, from now on, my home is your home. My mommy is your mommy, and my daddy is your daddy. Really? Lisa asked jokingly, will your wife be my wife from now on? Xiao Yichen immediately blushed and snapped, you don't even like women. In any case, since you've said so, from now on, what's yours is mine. We've already agreed. Lisa stuck out her little finger and asked curiously, I heard that you guys make such promises. This is called a retractor. Yes, pinky swear. Lisa cleared her throat and said, you have to promise me. Xiao Yichen laughed and looked at her. He shook his head and said, okay, I'll pinky swear with you. He stuck out his little finger and hooked it with hers. Pinky swear. Okay. Pinky swear. The night breeze was getting stronger. Lisa went back to bed and pulled the blanket over her. She didn't know why, but she had new expectations for tomorrow. Lisa. Wake up. Lisa slowly woke up from her dream. The moment she opened her eyes, she saw Xiao Yichen's excited expression. We're here. We're almost at the harbor. Chapter 3671. We're here, we're here. Mommy said that she's already waiting for us at the harbor. Oh, Lisa, hurry up and put on your clothes. Xiao Yichen brought some clothes for Lisa. Lisa yawned as she put on her clothes. She followed Xiao Yichen to the deck. However, even though they could already see the harbor, it was still quite a distance away. She was a little upset and glared at Xiao Yichen. Just as she was about to scold him, she saw that he was staring at the harbor from afar, as though he wished that he could grow wings and fly over there. I saw my mommy. Xiao Yichen said excitedly. Lisa's lips twitched violently. It's so far away. How did you see it? I think I saw it already. Xiao Yichen stared at the harbor anxiously. Lisa's heart ached for him and she gently held his hand. Little Yichen was completely unaware of it as he subconsciously held her little hand tightly. Lisa's heart skipped a beat. She followed Xiao Yichen's line of sight. However, from her perspective, the harbor was still very far away. Half an hour later, the ship finally docked at the harbor. Mu Yaja and Yun Shishir arrived at dawn. As they did not know when the ship would dock, they decided to come earlier. Yun Shishir saw Xiao Yichen waving at her from the ship. She was so emotional that tears welled up in her eyes. It's him. I saw it, I saw it. Yun Shishir was so emotional that she could not express it with words. Mu Yaja also smiled happily and hugged her shoulders. At the same time, he saw Gu Jinglian standing at the bow of the ship. The two men looked at each other, but the faint smell of gunpowder that they used to have when they met each other was gone. According to Gong Jie, Xiao Yichen had a fight on Gu Jinglian's ship. Gu Jinglian threatened him that if he lost, he would be thrown into the sea. He knew that Gu Jinglian was just joking, but Xiao Yichen took it seriously. He really beat the guy up, but he beat him up badly. When he heard that, he was immediately overjoyed. As expected of his son. After learning about this, he felt an inexplicable sense of accomplishment. This made him feel even prouder than if he had won a project worth hundreds of millions. They had not contacted each other for so many days. Although he did not say anything, he was still thinking about Xiao Yichen. When she found out that he was coming back today, she didn't sleep at all and rushed over early in the morning. When Xiao Yichen saw Mu Yaja and Yun Shishir, he immediately pulled Lisa aside and said, "Do you see that man in black? The very tall one. He's my daddy. The one in the camel coat next to her is my mommy. How was it? Beautiful, right? Isn't she pretty? She has a good temperament, right?" Lisa nodded, but in her heart, she thought, "Why don't I see you praising your daddy for being handsome? You're too biased." Why don't I see you and Yueyao? Xiao Yichen could not help but feel a little disappointed that he did not see the two little guys. The escalator was already set up. Xiao Yichen immediately pulled Lisa and rushed over. When they were about 3 steps away from the ground, Xiao Yichen could not wait to pounce on Yun Shishir. He was not light anymore. He fell into Yun Shishir's arms. If it weren't for Mu Yaja's steady support, he would have fallen to the ground. Mu Yaja was a little speechless. This lad pounced on Yun Shishir at the first opportunity and completely ignored him, his daddy, at the side. "Mommy. I'm going home." Chapter 36-72. Daddy, the way she called him, Daddy, completely dispelled the displeasure of being ignored. Mu Yaja smiled. "Okay. I'm going home, I'm going home." Xiao Yichen was so emotional that tears welled up in his eyes. When Yun Shishir saw this, she couldn't help but be moved as well. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "It's good to be home. It's good to be home. Mommy missed you so much." Yun Shishir hugged Xiao Yichen affectionately. On the other hand, Xiao Yichen hugged Yun Shishir tightly and refused to let go. Mu Yaja hugged Yun Shishir and the three of them hugged each other tightly. This heartwarming scene made Lisa, who was standing at the side, feel emotional. The family was reunited. She was genuinely happy for Xiao Yichen. How wonderful! Xiao Yichen suddenly thought of something. He gently shook off Yun Shishir's arm and turned his head to look to the side. He saw Lisa standing uneasily behind him. People were coming and going, but she was all alone, watching them silently. "Lisa, come here." He waved at her. Lisa was a little hesitant. She didn't know what to do. "Good girl, come here." Under Xiao Yichen's encouragement, Lisa finally took a step forward. She had the courage to take the first step. She slowly walked in front of Xiao Yichen and stood in front of Mu Yaja and Yun Shishir, but she was still a little uneasy. "Let me introduce you." Xiao Yichen turned to look at Mu Yaja and Yun Shishir and introduced her to them. "This is Lisa. She was the one who protected me when I left Ashland Island. She is also Yu Yu's personal bodyguard." Mu Yaja and Yun Shishir looked at Lisa and smiled. "Hello." "Thank you, Lisa." Yun Shishir hugged her gently. Thank you for bringing Xiao Yichen back. Lisa's body stiffened when she was hugged. When Yun Shushu released her, she took half a step back uneasily and explained softly, actually, it's nothing. Mommy, can I discuss something with you? Xiao Yichen looked at Yun Shushu seriously and said in a negotiating tone, in the future, let's make Lisa our family, okay? She doesn't have a daddy or a mommy. She's been an orphan since she was young. I want to give her a home. I want her to be like Yueyao, with a daddy and a mommy. Yun Shushu was a little stunned when she heard this. She did not expect Xiao Yichen to make such a request. However, her slight hesitation caused Lisa to misunderstand. She had thought that Yun Shushu was a little unwilling. After all, it was indeed difficult for her to acknowledge an unrelated girl as her daughter for no good reason, right? She did not like to make things difficult for others. She immediately pulled Xiao Yichen over and muttered, Mu Yichen, are you serious? I was just joking with you last night. I wasn't joking. Mu Yichen said seriously, didn't we agree on this? My home is your home. Lisa, you have a home in the future too. Yes. Yun Shushu immediately said, Lisa, just like Xiao Yichen said, stay. Huh? But, Lisa was obviously a little embarrassed. Yun Shushu smiled and said, why? You don't want to. Lisa hurriedly shook her head. It wasn't that she didn't want to, she was so nervous that her fingers were trembling. Lisa looked at Xiao Yichen, then at Mu Yaja and Yun Shushu. She asked tentatively, can I? Were they really willing? Actually, she also wanted to have a home. It was just that she did not want to force herself. Chapter 3673. Mu Yichen suddenly held her hand, followed by Yun Shushu's, and gently placed Lisa's hand on Yun Shushu's. Lisa, from now on, my home is your home, okay? Xiao Yichen smiled. Yun Shushu glanced at Mu Yaja and then at Lisa before gently holding her hand. Lisa's heart trembled. This woman's hand was very warm. She could not help but be greedy for such warmth. It was just that, Yun Shushu's heart ached a little as she held her little hand. Lisa's hand was a little rough. Her palm was full of calluses from training. Especially on the palm of his left hand, there was a scar caused by a dagger. It was very rough. Yun Shushu's heart ached for her. She had heard Gong Jie mention some things about Lisa. Such a young girl was actually the world's top assassin. What kind of cruel training did he have to go through to be able to develop such skills? She put herself in Yun Shushu's shoes. If Yueyao had suffered so much, Yun Shushu's heart would definitely ache. Moreover, this girl had once protected Yu with her life. Now, she had brought Xiao Yichen back to her side safe and sound. Yun Shushu was so grateful that she could not repay her kindness. Lisa, stay, okay? We're very willing to accept you as our family. Yun Shushu expressed her stance. This was also Mu Yaja's stance. Lisa hesitated for a long time before finally nodding. She looked seriously into Yun Shushu's eyes and smiled knowingly. Okay. Xiao Yichen excitedly hugged her when he heard this. Lisa's face turned red from embarrassment, but she did not push him away. Instead, she squinted her eyes and smiled. Mu Yichen. Yun Tianyo's voice suddenly came from behind. Mu Yichen looked in the direction of the voice in shock and saw Yu walking toward him with Yueyao in his arms. Seeing Yu again, although he did not have the familiar warm smile, he did not have the cold expression he had when he saw him on Ashland Island. Mu Yichen and Lisa were a little stunned. Has he regained his memory? She asked Yun Shushu in a low voice. Yun Shushu shook her head dejectedly and said, I believe that he'll recover sooner or later. Even if he did not, it did not matter. Yu was still Yu. No matter what he had become, he would still be her Yu. Yu was still unsmiling even when he walked up to Mu Yichen. Mu Yichen did not expect Yu to come and fetch him, too. He walked up to Yu. Yueyao, who was in his arms, saw Mu Yichen and was all smiles. She extended her arms toward him. Xiao Yichen immediately took the boy from Yu Yu's arms. Yueyao, big brother is home. Xiao Yichen hugged Yueyao lovingly. Even his voice was faintly trembling. He squeezed Yueyao's little hand and asked gently, Yueyao, big brother isn't home. Did you miss big brother? Yueyao opened her little mouth and pouted. Yes. Xiao Yichen was even more elated when he heard this. Yueyao tilted her head and asked, did big brother bring anything delicious back? She had just grown out her teeth, so her speech was still a little slurred. Her voice was tender and childish. When Xiao Yichen heard this, he immediately searched his pocket and found something to eat. He passed it to Yueyao. Lisa glanced at it and burst out laughing. It was a hardtack. Chapter 3674. Yueyao stared at the compressed biscuit, not knowing what it was. Xiao Yichen took it with one hand and tore open the packaging with his mouth. Then, he passed the biscuit to her. Yueyao was craving it. She immediately held the biscuit in her hands and gnawed on it. However, the compressed biscuit was very firm. Her teeth had just grown out and were very tender. She couldn't bite it no matter how hard she tried, but her saliva got all over her hand. Yueyao gnawed on the biscuit pitifully. It was obvious that she was having a hard time. This made Mu Yaja and Yun Shishir laugh. That's great. Just treat it as grinding teeth. Yun Shishir said. Mu Yichen laughed. However, Yu Yu suddenly said, Mu Yichen. He turned his head and met Yu Yu's eyes. Yu Yu suddenly smiled. Welcome home. Welcome home. Xiao Yichen was stunned. He really didn't expect Yu Yu to say such warm words when she had lost her memory. He seemed to recall the hypnotic dream again. In the dream, he stood outside the villa and looked fervently at the happy scene of the family of 4 in the villa. The door of the villa suddenly opened. Daddy, Mommy, and Yu Yu stood at the door with Yueyao in his arms. They smiled at him. He had been firm from the beginning. Even if the whole world betrayed him, be it Daddy, Mommy, Yu Yu, or Yueyao, that family would always be his family. They would never betray him. Xiao Yichen reached out his left arm and hugged Yu Yu's shoulder. His eyes couldn't help but moisten. Xiao Yichen smiled with tears in his eyes. Brother is home. Yu Yu smiled quietly. Regardless of whether her memory had recovered, Yu Yu had truly accepted him from the bottom of her heart. Mu Yichen also understood that Yu Yu hadn't recovered her memory, but it didn't matter. They would get to know each other again and get along with each other again. There was still a long way to go. Blood ties couldn't be severed no matter what. Let's go home. Yun Shishir took Yueyao from Xiao Yichen's arms, and the group went home. Before they left, Mu Yaja suddenly felt a gaze on his back, and he immediately said, Get in the car. And Yu Yu. And. Mu Yaja slowly turned around and saw Gu Jinglian standing at the bow of the boat, looking down at him. He had seen the scene just now. He didn't know why, but he felt warm in his heart. Such a scene seemed to be familiar to him. He remembered that when he returned from North Africa, he also had the same feeling. They were home. The concept of home was suddenly very clear. The two men's eyes met, but they didn't say much. Sometimes, the expression between men was just that simple. One look and everything was clear. Mu Yaja was expressing his gratitude to him. However, although Gu Jinglian looked disdainful on the surface, his arrogant personality hid a gentle heart. If it had been in the past, he would have chosen to ignore the distress signal from the yacht. However, his experience in North Africa made him have a new understanding of life. He didn't expect that he would accidentally save the 2 children, Mu Yichen and Lisa. In that case, he had done Mu Yaja a huge favor. Chapter 3675. When it came to the Mu and Gu families, Mu Yaja and Gu Jinglian's names were intimidating. The 2 emperor-like men in the capital could be said to be on par with each other. Perhaps it was the appreciation between the strong. Even though there were some grudges between the previous generation, they still maintained the etiquette of not interfering with each other's business in their generation. Now, it could be said that because of this matter, the Mu and Gu families had made peace. As Gu Jinglian walked down the escalator, Mu Yaja walked up to him and spoke first. I heard that young Master Gu's wedding is imminent. Earlier on, Gu Jinglian had heard that he was planning a wedding. Actually, Gu Jinglian and Chu Ho did not care much about the wedding. However, Uncle Fu and Xiao Bao had been egging them on, and Lin Shi had also added fuel to the fire. They had always wanted to hold a wedding. Gu Jinglian thought about it. After all, the Gu family had not had such a lively event for many years. Hence, he agreed to it. Although Gu Jinglian had previously expressed his disdain for the wedding, when it was time to actually hold it, he still personally prepared for it, even though he did not say anything. There was once when he was instructing Uncle Fu to decorate the bridal chamber, and Chu Ho bumped into him. Gu Jinglian was so embarrassed. However, Chu Ho was thick-skinned and took pleasure in his misfortune. She thought that Gu Jinglian was forced by Uncle Fu. Gu Jinglian was even angrier. However, although he was angry, he still made meticulous preparations. Seeing that Mu Yaja had taken the initiative to bring up this matter, Gu Jinglian was a little surprised. However, he did not show it. Instead, he raised his eyes and glanced at Mu Yaja. He asked calmly, "Young Master Mu, are you saying that you want to give me a big gift?" Mu Yaja smiled and said, "That depends on whether young Master Gu will invite me or not." Gu Jinglian snorted and said arrogantly, "Whether I invite you or not depends on how sincere your gift is." Mu Yaja appeared to be very calm. There is definitely sincerity. No matter what, you can't break the etiquette. Gu Jinglian finally smiled when he heard this. Mu Yaja was surprised to see him smile. In the past, she had rarely met Gu Jinglian, but it was strange to see Gu Jinglian smile. Gu Jinglian was a rather arrogant man. He was so sharp that even Mu Yaja was not a match for him. But now, for some reason, Mu Yaja felt that Gu Jinglian's sharpness had lessened a little. On the 1st of next month. On the 1st of next month, which is half a month later. Mu Yaja said again, "I will be there on time." Gu Jinglian glanced at him and did not say anything. The entourage behind him came up to him. He looked back and left without saying a word. Mu Yaja broke into laughter and walked toward the parking lot as well. Along the way, Xiao Yichen was chattering non-stop. He told Yun Shishir and Mu Yaja about the thrilling events at sea. However, Yun Shishir frowned as she listened. Pirates? Are there really pirates? Yun Shishir had grown up in a peaceful era. She had only heard about pirates on television. She had never heard of such ferocious pirates in real life. Xiao Yichen had even seen them. Yes. Of course, the pirates of Somalia were famous for being ruthless. If not for Lisa, I wouldn't know how to deal with them alone. Lisa immediately said, "Hey, don't push all the blame to me. You are much more ruthless than me." Chapter 3676. As Yun Shishir spoke, her expression became increasingly serious. In fact, before this, Lisa had already mentioned to Gong Jia that Gong Xiaoying had hypnotized Mu Yichen. Gong Jia had also told Yun Shishir about this matter. However, Mu Yichen did not mention a word about this matter. Because it was not worth mentioning. Such a small trick was nothing to him. When Yun Shishir heard this, she was extremely touched. Yu had been hypnotized, but Xiao Yichen had not been affected. She had not expected that Xiao Yichen, who had seemed the most unreliable in the past, would have such strong conviction at such a critical moment. However, she did not take the initiative to ask about this matter. This was a grudge between her and Gong Xiaoying. She would resolve it. Now that Xiao Yichen had returned home safe and sound, it was already a blessing in disguise. Gong Xiaoying, initially, her hatred for her father was only because of her mother. Her mother had longed for him for so long. She had waited for him for so long, but this man had never appeared in her life. However, now, her hatred for him had become more and more unforgettable. He had actually treated Yu Yu and Mui Chen this way. This was something that she could not forgive no matter what. He was too selfish. In order to keep Yu Yu by his side and use him to fulfill his own ambitions, he had actually sealed his memories. Now, he even had thoughts of Xiao Chen. How cruel was Gong Xiaoying? She put herself in his shoes. Could it be that he did not understand the pain of being forgotten by his family? Along the way, Yun Shishir was extremely silent. Mu Yaja understood the pain and hatred in her heart. He gently placed his hand on the back of her hand and said gently, "Sometimes, the more you avoid certain things and the more you are unwilling to face them, the more it will never be resolved." Yun Shishir understood what he meant. "I understand. It's time to end things with that person." Mu Yaja continued, "This matter is between you and him. I have no right to intervene. However, no matter what decision you make, I will always stand by your side." When Yun Shishir heard this, she was a little touched. His words were more than enough for her to hear. Yun Shishir said solemnly, "I will weigh the pros and cons." She decided to make a clean break with Gong Xiaoying. She would never acknowledge this father of hers. At the same time, she wanted to make a declaration to him. No matter what, don't touch her family. Otherwise, no matter how weak she was, she would never let her off. Originally, with the passage of time, she did not intend to fuss over the past grudges and grievances. That was a grudge between his mother and him, and she had no right to intervene. However, now that this matter involved Yu Yu and Xiao Chen, it had crossed her bottom line. When they reached home, Mu Yaja carried Mui Chen into the bathroom and gave him a bath. Since they had been at sea, Mui Chen did not realize that his body was full of the fishy smell. He rubbed the body wash a few times before the smell subsided. When Gong Jie saw that Mui Chen was back, he was completely relieved. Yun Shishir asked him, "Did that person contact you?" "No." Gong Jie knew that when Yun Shishir said, "that person," she was referring to Gong Xiaoying. Yun Shishir said hatefully, "He is so heartless. This time, I have decided to end things completely with him." Gong Jie was stunned, but he was not surprised. "Perhaps this decision will put you in a difficult position." "No." Chapter 3677. When Xiao Chen came out of the shower, he felt as if he had shed a layer of skin. Mu Yaja had bathed him, but it was as if he was washing clothes. He wanted to roll him into a ball and rub him on the washboard. He felt as if his bones were about to fall apart. When Xiao Chen came out of the bathroom, he did not see Lisa and Yu Yu. He walked around the room suspiciously. When he passed by the balcony, he suddenly saw two figures in the backyard. He narrowed his eyes and walked over to the door. He saw Lisa and Yu Yu with their backs to him. They seemed to be talking about something. "Lisa, after being in hurricane for so long, you're the person I trust the most." Yu Yu turned around expressionlessly. He sized up Lisa and asked in a low voice, "Is Gong Xiaoying lying to me?" When Xiao Chen saw this, he held his breath nervously. He did not know how Lisa should answer. Lisa was a member of Hurricane. Would she betray Gong Xiaoying? Just when Xiao Chen was feeling uneasy, Lisa smiled and said calmly, "Gong Xiaoying is indeed lying to you." "Why would he lie to me?" "There are two reasons." "Two reasons?" Yu Yu frowned and said suspiciously, "Tell me." "First, you're his grandson. You're his family. Naturally, he wants to keep you by his side. Second, you have extraordinary talents. He wants to make use of you to complete the Devai project." When Yu Yu heard this, he could not help but fall silent. He was a little sad. He did not expect that the man he trusted so much would make use of him like this. "I lost a lot of my memories." The boy sucked in a deep breath of cold air. "Do you know why I lost my memories, though?" "Because," Lisa hesitated for a moment and immediately said, "Alice hypnotized you." "Hypnosis?" Yu Yu was a little suspicious. Xiao Yichen was also hypnotized, but you said that the hypnosis failed. Why did his hypnosis fail, but mine did? Lisa frowned and hesitated. Because you're different from him. What do you mean? Yu was a little unhappy. Are you saying that my beliefs and willpower are not as strong as his? Because you have two. These words stunned Yu. He didn't quite understand what Lisa was trying to say. What do you mean I have two? Lisa explained. Alice said that you have two personalities, one full of sunshine, the other full of darkness. As for hypnotism, it made use of this point to use the second personality to kill the first personality. At that time, Alice was also very surprised. This was because, generally speaking, for people with dual personalities, the second personality would never be able to replace the first personality. However, your first personality had really disappeared from your body. Your first personality was the Yu that everyone was familiar with. After your first personality disappeared, all the memories of your first personality were sealed up. Yu listened, but he didn't quite understand. He didn't know that he had two personalities. He also didn't know what dual personalities meant. Lisa explained it to him again. Then, he vaguely understood. So, you're saying that the second personality is controlling me now? Yes. Yu asked tentatively, can I go back to how I was before? Chapter 3678. Lisa also shook her head. Alice said that there can only be one split personality. Otherwise, there will be a day when one's mind is destroyed. There can only be one split personality between the first and second personality. If you can really go back to the past, then the current you will disappear. Yu was stunned when he heard this. The current me will disappear? Yes. Then, Yu suddenly felt suffocated. Will all my memories of the present disappear as well? Just like how you won't be able to remember everything that happened in the past. Because in the past, you had two personalities. One was very gentle and kind. The other was a destructive personality. If you want to get something, you will become cruel and unscrupulous. You will even pay any price. Yu fell silent when he heard this. He suddenly lowered his head and looked at his hands. He gently curled them into fists and then relaxed them. The feeling he got from his hands made him feel that he was still alive. However, Lisa said that if the two personalities existed at the same time, they would reject each other. Finally, one day, the mind would be destroyed. However, was the current him going to give up this body to the previous Yu? He couldn't do it. Every personality was selfish. He wasn't willing to leave this body because there was a longing in his heart. Although he didn't say it and didn't express it, he really wanted to stay in this family and become a part of it. Then, Yu said dejectedly, if I leave this body, will the previous Yu return to this body? Maybe. If he disappears, he might not be able to come back. Yu looked a little stunned. He knew in his heart that others didn't know, but he knew that the previous Yu hadn't disappeared. In other words, the first personality hadn't disappeared from the body. It still carried the memories and was sealed in the depths of the body. He would often dream of that child. That Yu was trapped in a prison. He could often see him and talk to him. He had dreamed countless times that he was traveling on the sea with a child. He was wearing a black shirt, and the child was wearing a white shirt. The child was running non-stop, and he was absorbing the child into his body. Then, Yu disappeared. He took his place. It turned out that the child was another personality. He had no way of knowing. He only thought that he was the invader, another version of himself. He never thought that the two personalities were two completely different entities. Why? He had to create him. Why did he have to compete with a child for a body when he was the one who created him and brought him to this world? He also wanted to exist. But how should he exist? Yu asked calmly, compared to me, they probably prefer the old Yu, don't they? Lisa looked at him in surprise, but didn't say anything. Daddy is one, Mommy is one, little Yichen is one, and so is Yueyao. Including you, Lisa, right? Compared to me, you want the old Yu to come back, right? Chapter 3679. On the other hand, he wasn't needed, wasn't liked, and didn't have any value in his existence. Lisa couldn't say a word for a long time. She didn't expect Yu to be so sensitive as to say that. However, it was the truth. Lisa missed the Yu of the past, the gentle and kind Yu. However, her heart ached when she heard what he said. Xiao Yichen's voice suddenly came from behind. You're needed. Yu was stunned. He turned around in shock and looked at Xiao Yichen. Seeing him walking towards him slowly, he didn't know what to do. He said unhappily, "Why were you eavesdropping on our conversation?" "What do you mean by eavesdropping?" Little Yichen said matter-of-factly, "I'm clearly listening openly." Yu was speechless. Who said you're not needed? Whether it's the Yu of the past or the Yu of the present, we need both of you. Not one less. Yu couldn't help but laugh when he heard this. He pursed his lips and said coldly, "What if you had to choose between the two Yu?" Xiao Yichen was stunned when he heard this. He asked in confusion, "Why would I have to choose between the two?" "Because there's only one personality in this body." Yu looked at him with a burning gaze. "If you had to choose, which one would you choose?" Xiao Yichen was speechless. Yu already knew the answer. He didn't seem to care, but he was a little disappointed. However, he still maintained his cold expression and said calmly, "Your choice is definitely not me, right?" Xiao Yichen hesitated. "Is there no other choice?" "No." Yu smiled again. "Actually, you've already told me your answer." As he said this, his face became cold again and he brushed past him. Xiao Yichen stood rooted to the ground in a daze. For a moment, he couldn't come back to his senses. Lisa looked at Yu who was walking away and felt a suffocating pain in her heart. She could empathize with this kind of disappointment and helplessness of not being needed. Lisa's heart ached. She really didn't know how to choose. If it really came to that point, whether it was Mu Yaja, Yun Shishir, Xiao Yichen, or Yue Yao, they would all choose the Yu of the past, right? Even he himself seemed to have made such a choice subconsciously. What about the Yu now? Was she really not needed, anymore? Mommy, mothers and SSTSTT know how long's not to be heard. What's the matter? Yun Shishir didn't notice the loneliness and hesitation in her son's voice. Now that Xiao Yichen was back, she wanted to show off her cooking skills and cook a table full of delicious dishes. Mommy, do you know that Yu has dissociative identity disorder? Yun Shishir stopped what she was doing. She turned around in confusion and looked at Xiao Yichen. Frowning, she asked, "Why did you suddenly bring this up?" One is the gentle Yu of the past, and the other is the Yu of the present. If you had to choose, which one would you choose? Is it the Yu of the past? Why must you make such a cruel choice? Yun Shishir was a little worried. No matter who it is, Yu is still Yu, isn't it? Chapter 3680. Xiao Yichen continued, "If you choose the current Yu, then the old Yu will be completely destroyed. If you choose the old Yu, then the current Yu will also disappear from your body." Yun Shishir frowned slightly. "Mommy, don't you want the old Yu to come back?" "Yes, then, what about the current Yu?" Yun Shishir suddenly fell silent. She sighed. "I don't want to lose any of them." In the study room, Yu sat on the chair and looked out of the French window quietly. He suddenly felt a little envious. He had never envied anyone, except for Yu. It was only when he became part of his life that he started to feel envious. The old Yu had led such a happy life. Every night, Yun Shishir would read him a bedtime story. Even though he always felt that such stories were childish and ridiculous, he would fall asleep without nightmares as he listened to her gentle voice. In the morning, Mu Yaja would wake him up for a morning run. He gradually fell in love with such a life. It was a life where he could rely on and be relied on. Yu led such a life for 8 years. But he had never had it. Just like what Lisa had said, if he had never had it, he would not have longed for it. However, once he had it and tasted happiness, it would be extremely difficult to give it up. Yu Yu turned around. The desk beside him was where the old Yu Yu used to work. His fingers gently caressed the solid wood surface of the desk. The smooth and slightly cold touch made him feel a little lost. Just like this desk and everything here, it did not seem to belong to him. He had no choice but to accept all of this logically and with a clear conscience. However, he felt a little unwilling to give up this position. What the old Yu Yu could not do, he could do. What the old Yu Yu could do, he could do better. He wanted to stay. Yu Yu suddenly stood up and stood in front of the bed. He gazed at the scenery in the garden. In the back garden, beautiful Chinese roses were blooming proudly. Have the two children successfully reached the capital? Ashland Island. Gong Xiaoying sat on the bed in the bedroom. This bed used to be Yu Yu's bed and Xiao Yichen's bed. His subordinate immediately replied, "As far as I know, the two children have returned to the capital." Gong Xiaoying's eyes were filled with surprise. You, we searched along the way and found the yacht they were on when they left. There was a corpse on it. According to our analysis, it was the corpse of a pirate. Gong Xiaoying became nervous. Pirates? Did they encounter pirates? A few days ago, their yacht was probably caught in a storm at sea, so they turned back and encountered pirates. After a pause, he explained, "But I don't think they were hurt. They hung the corpse on the pole of the yacht as a deterrent." Gong Xiaoying was relieved when he heard this. He was surprised and delighted. He did not expect his two grandsons to be so capable. One was intelligent and the other had amazing martial arts skills. What about Lisa? Didn't she come back? No. Forget it, let her be. She only has one master in her heart. As Gong Xiaoying said this, he waved his hand and his subordinates left respectfully. Chapter 3681. Everything had come to an end. Whether it was the absurdity, the ambition, or the decades of hatred, they had finally let go. Gong Xiaoying sighed. His back seemed to have aged a lot. It's time to eat. The family sat down at the dining table. The dining table was huge. Even if the 7 of them squeezed together, it was still big enough. Hua Jin had rushed back from the set when he found out that Xiao Yichen had returned home. Mu Yaja and Yun Shishir sat on one side, Gong Jia and Yu Yu sat on the other, Xiao Yichen and Lisa sat on the other, and Hua Jin and little Yueyao sat on the other. Lisa only felt that the attractiveness of this table was simply star-studded. Gong Jia and Hua Jin were especially good-looking. Gong Jia was especially particular about dressing up. Hua Jin had just returned from the set, so he still had a thick layer of makeup on his face. Xiao Yichen teased him, "Uncle Hua Jin, aren't you going to remove your makeup before eating? What if the powder on your face floats into my bowl?" Hua Jin choked and said angrily, "Xiao Yichen, I was looking forward to seeing you come home. You're teasing me the moment you're back. I'm not happy." "That's right." Yun Shishir immediately stopped them and said, "All right, it's rare that we're happy today. Stop arguing and start eating. Try my cooking." Everyone had already picked up their chopsticks, but when they heard that Yun Shishir was cooking, they were all stunned. "Isn't brother-in-law cooking tonight?" Mu Yaja said innocently, "No." After being married for so long, Mu Yaja was usually the one who cooked. After a year, he had perfected his culinary skills. Although he wasn't as good as Yu Yu's cooking from a 5-star hotel, he was still good at cooking basic home-cooked dishes. Yun Shishir rarely cooked. However, whether it was Gong Jia or Hua Jin, they all remembered that Yun Shishir would occasionally cook some dark dishes. They didn't dare to eat. Hua Jin said pitifully, "I miss Yu Yu's cooking. I don't know when I'll be able to taste it." Yu Yu frowned in confusion. Was my cooking in the past? When he asked this question, the group of people looked at him seriously and nodded in unison. Gong Jia said, "I've always been picky, but as long as it's your cooking, I can't find anything wrong with it. Yu couldn't help but be stunned. Hua Jin added, Yu's cooking is very good. At least, I haven't seen anyone who can cook better than Yu. Lisa clumsily picked up her chopsticks. She knew how to use chopsticks, but she still couldn't get used to it. She looked at the dishes and didn't know where to start. Because, these dishes were all unheard of. After being in Hurricane for so long, she was used to eating Western food and rarely touched Chinese food. Occasionally, she would eat Chinese food, but it was already Western-style Chinese food. She had never eaten authentic Chinese food. What is this? This is steamed chicken. Dip it in the sauce and it'll be delicious. Yun Shishir added, this is ready-made from the market. After she said that, the group of people rushed to grab the steamed chicken with their chopsticks. Yun Shishir couldn't help but feel speechless. They were so enthusiastic when they heard that she didn't cook it. These people must be deliberately trying to undermine her. Lisa picked up a piece of chicken and dipped it in the sauce as Yun Shishir said. She took a bite and her eyes lit up. Yun Shishir's gaze was fervent. Is it to your taste? Yes, it's delicious. Chapter 3682. Lisa finished the chicken in no time and picked up another piece. This time, she dipped it in more sauce. It was obvious that she liked to eat boiled chicken. Yun Shishir introduced the dishes one by one. This is red braised pork, this is old goose soup, this is, what kind of meat is red braised pork made of? Pork. Yun Shishir probed, do you have any taboos? Some people's religious beliefs forbade pork. Lisa shook her head. I eat all kinds of meat. Xiao Yichen shivered. You eat human meat too? Lisa smiled. Of course, if you're willing to contribute yourself. Everyone at the table laughed. The atmosphere became lively all of a sudden. Lisa quickly got used to the warm atmosphere of the dinner. In the past, when they ate in Hurricane, the huge dining hall was very quiet and silent. Everyone sat at one table and hurriedly finished their meal and left. Eating was just to relieve hunger and it didn't take too long. This was the first time she ate with so many people. At first, she felt a little awkward. However, as she got familiar with them, she also felt that it would be very lively to have so many people eating and chatting together. Hua Jin narrowed his eyes and suddenly said, Today, I overheard a few extras chatting on set and learned about a very cruel dish. Cruel? Yun Shishir frowned. What dish? Sanji. Gong Jia was curious when he heard that. Why is it called Sanji. Because it has something to do with the ingredients of the dish. Gong Jia's face darkened. Don't keep me in suspense. Hua Jin was afraid when he saw his expression. He immediately sat up straight and said, the main dish is a newborn live rat. The person who eats it will use a pair of red-hot iron chopsticks to pick up the rat. It will squeak once, and this is the first squeak. When it is dipped in seasoning, it will squeak again, and this is the second squeak. When it is placed in the mouth, it will squeak again, so it is called Sanji. I heard that this dish is very delicious, but it is especially scary when eaten. As soon as Hua Jin finished speaking, the group of people silently put down their chopsticks. Yun Shishir, in particular, felt nauseous. Live rats? It's not a rat. It's a hairy rat. It's artificially bred and very hygienic. How strange. There are still people who eat rats alive. Xiao Yichen covered her mouth. That's disgusting. Uncle Hua Jin, you must be here to cause trouble. It wasn't easy for mommy to cook a table of dishes, but you ruined everyone's appetite. Hua Jin said innocently, I'm innocent. I only said it because Master Jia asked me to. Gong Jia said angrily, if you didn't mention it, would I have asked you? I won't take the blame for this. Yun Shishir warned, you're not allowed to say such disgusting things again. Lisa, on the other hand, was very calm. No one touched their chopsticks. She was the only one who was seriously studying the braised pork. Xiao Yichen asked in confusion, Lisa, don't you feel disgusted? I don't. Lisa said calmly, I've seen people eat live bamboo rats before. The group of people fell silent. That's disgusting. Hua Jin was obviously disgusted. Actually, it's not particularly disgusting. It's okay. It's just that I don't have the courage to eat live things unless I have no other choice. As Lisa spoke, she put a piece of braised pork into her mouth and chewed contentedly. She raised her eyebrows in surprise. The braised pork is delicious. Chapter 3683. Mu Yaja took a bite, but his expression was one of disdain. Yun Shishir was unhappy when she saw his expression. What's wrong? Is it not good? It's not as good as you use. Lisa, it's such a pity. You use red braised pork used to be the best. It's just a pity that you didn't come at the right time. Yun Shishir was full of confidence. However, Yu took a bite of the red braised pork and finally gave a pertinent comment. I don't remember the red braised pork I made in the past, but Mommy's red braised pork is very delicious. He had always been a man of few words. However, his words helped to clear Yun Shishir's name. Hearing Yu's support for her, Yun Shishir was so excited that her eyes sparkled. She was filled with confidence. After dinner, Xiao Yichen had just made his bed when he suddenly thought of Lisa. He asked Yun Shishir curiously, Mommy, have you prepared a room for Lisa? How would I have time to prepare a room now? Yun Shishir continued, but Lisa will definitely have a room tonight. When Lisa heard this, she immediately said, I can sleep on the sofa too. How can you sleep on the sofa? It will be very cold at night. Xiao Yichen disagreed. Yun Shishir said, Lisa, can you stay in Yueyao's room? Yueyao's room? Yes. Yueyao is still young, so the room has been prepared long ago. However, who knows when Yueyao will be able to stay in her room? You can stay in that room for now. When Yueyao is older, we can prepare a new room for her. At least for the next few years, I won't feel comfortable letting her stay in such a big room alone. Yun Shishir took Lisa to a room on the second floor. When Yueyao was still in her stomach, Mu Yaja had personally decorated the princess room. However, he had obviously overlooked the fact that it would take a long time for Yueyao to grow up and sleep alone in a big room. Therefore, this room had been empty until now. Fortunately, there were people who cleaned it regularly, so it was very clean. Yun Shishir had just pushed open the door when she saw Lisa standing at the doorway. She glanced over and felt her heart twist violently. At a glance, everything was pink. The room had a simple American style. There was a small white bed with pink curtains. Mu Yaja had thoughtfully chosen a bed with a railing. The most adorable thing was that the bed was a bunk bed. There were 2 rows of beds. The lower row was designed with a desk and a row of wardrobes. The top of the bed was designed in the shape of a castle. Other than that, there was a computer, a walk-in closet, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a beautifully decorated balcony. The pink walls, pink curtains, and pink and white curtains were a very harmonious combination. A room like this was very big for Lisa. At a glance, it was about 40 square meters. There was a separate bathroom with a circular bathtub. Beside the bathtub, there was a shower function. She could take a bath and take a shower to satisfy her needs. Yun Shishir squatted in front of Lisa and asked, From now on, you can stay in this room, okay? Lisa blushed a little and said embarrassedly, Then what about Yueyao? Didn't I say that when Yueyao grows up, it's still too early for her to live alone? Okay, thank you, Auntie. Lisa thanked her politely. She looked around the room and couldn't help but laugh. It was all pink for young girls. However, she didn't like pink that much. However, she didn't care about the color as long as there was a bed. Chapter 3684. Yun Shishir took out a blanket from the wardrobe and spread it out for her. Suddenly, she thought of something and said to Lisa, I'll bring you to buy some clothes tomorrow. I'm fine with anything. Lisa was not particular when it came to clothes. Usually, she would wear tighter-fitting clothes. She would wear a combat vest all year round. When there were no missions to be carried out, she would wear the simplest kind of undershirt and camouflage trousers. Clothes were bought according to size. Hence, Lisa was really careless when it came to dressing. How can you dress casually? You can't always dress like a boy, right? A girl should wear a dress and dress up beautifully. As Yun Shusher said this, she helped her tidy up her clothes and smiled. Do you know that Yu's father loves daughters the most? When he was pregnant with his younger sister, he kept saying that he must have a daughter. Luckily, it was really a younger sister. If it was a younger brother, I'm afraid he would have given up all his hopes. Isn't it good to have a son? Lisa said, I just wish I was a boy, so that I could be a little stronger and grow a little taller. Isn't it good to be a girl? It's troublesome to be a girl. Lisa said plainly, girls will be bullied. When Yun Shusher heard this, she was a little stunned. How can girls be bullied? Girls should be protected. Lisa lowered her head and suddenly stopped talking. Yun Shusher saw that she was a little disappointed and said helplessly, I don't know what you've been through in the past, but from now on, since you're part of our family, you're as good as my daughter. In my heart, daughters are little princesses. They should wear dresses and dress up beautifully. If anyone dares to bully you, Xiao Yichen will be the first to stand up and protect you. Him? Lisa smiled. He might not be able to defeat me. Yun Shusher was speechless. As Lisa said this, she clenched her fists slightly. The muscles on her muscular arms suddenly became clear. The lines of her arms were especially beautiful. Her muscles were not bloated, but they had beautiful curves and texture. Yun Shusher was so shocked that she couldn't speak. She raised her hand and gently pinched her triceps. She was scared out of her wits. You look rather skinny. I didn't expect you to be so lean. The flesh on Lisa's body was all muscle, without a trace of excess fat or fat. Therefore, even though she looked very skinny, in reality, her strength was even more terrifying than that of a grown man. Lisa smiled. I've been training since I was young. All of this is the result of training. Then, you can definitely do a lot of push-ups. I don't do push-ups. That kind of training doesn't work for me. Then, what kind of training do you usually do? Lisa raised her eyebrows and took half a step back. She placed her left hand behind her back and used her right arm to do a handstand. She did it steadily without the slightest wobble. Just as Yun Shusher was so shocked that she couldn't close her mouth, she saw Lisa's right hand, which was supporting herself on the ground, suddenly raise 2 fingers. She used only her index and middle fingers to do a handstand. Moreover, she didn't just do a handstand. She bent her arm and straightened it again. Her handstand was terrifyingly accurate. Lisa landed on the ground and stood up. Her face was not red and her heart was not beating fast. I usually train like this. Yun Shusher was speechless. What a terrifying level of training. She trained her body so well. This girl. Chapter 3685. When Lisa finished showering and walked out of the shower, Yun Shusher had already tidied up the room. She added a lot of furnishings and even made the bed for her. You're done showering? Yun Shusher said as she tidied up the bedding. One blanket shouldn't be cold. It's made of goose down. I also brought a blanket for you, so you might feel hot. If you feel hot at night, just remove the blanket. As she nagged, Lisa felt extremely warm. So, was this how a home felt like? She walked to the side of the bed, but she was at a loss. She said hurriedly, I'll tidy up the room myself. It's late. You should go to bed. Yun Shusher stood up and said, I've already tidied up the room. How about this? I know what I'm missing. I'll just buy it tomorrow. Lisa smiled. I don't think I'm missing anything. I'm already satisfied with a bed and a bathroom. You're so easily satisfied. Yun Shishir brought the pajamas over. However, you might have to be more particular tonight. Wear Xiao Yichen's pajamas first. Lisa glanced at the sky blue pajamas in her hands and felt a little awkward. Xiao Yichen's pajamas, don't worry. I've already washed them clean. You don't mind being particular all night, right? She didn't mind at all. It was just that, she was just a little shy. Lisa hugged the pajamas tightly and nodded. Just as she was about to change into them, Yun Shishir immediately walked over and drew the curtains. She said angrily, Lisa, you're too bold. You didn't even draw the curtains before changing into your clothes. She blinked her eyes in confusion. Yun Shishir found it funny too. Perhaps she was making a fuss over nothing. Lisa was still a little girl and had grown up in Hurricane. She was probably used to interacting with men, so her behavior was as straightforward as a boy's and she didn't care about the details. However, although she didn't have much meat on her, it was better to develop this habit. She was a girl after all. Just as Yun Shishir was about to leave, she suddenly thought of something. She turned back to the room and asked tentatively, Lisa, Xiao Yichen said that you like to listen to bedtime stories too, Lisa was stunned for a moment before she gently nodded. I've never heard of you, but I heard from Xiao Yichen that you always read him bedtime stories. I'll read it for you. Yun Shishir said and went to the study to find some fairy tale picture books. When she walked into the room, Lisa was lying on the bed with her eyes open, as if she was waiting for something. She sat down by the bed and flipped through a few pages. When she saw the first story, she asked, Have you heard of the Little Match Girl? No. Then let's talk about this today. The Little Match Girl. This was a classic fairy tale. It tells the sad fate of a little girl who sold matches on Christmas Eve. Because she didn't sell a single match. The little girl hadn't eaten for a day. She was cold and hungry. When she lit the first match, she saw a fragrant roast goose. When she lit the second match, she saw a beautiful Christmas tree. When she lit the third match, she saw her grandmother, whom she hadn't seen in a long time. She wanted her grandmother to stay by her side, so she lit an entire bunch of matches. Chapter 3686. Her voice seemed to have a unique magical power. The words in the book seemed to turn into a vivid dream as Yun Shishir's gentle voice spoke. Lisa actually fell asleep peacefully with the dream realm as her pillow. Before Yun Shishir could finish reading the ending, she saw that Lisa had fallen asleep. She looked at the story again and felt that the ending of the fairy tale was too tragic. She thought for a moment and changed the ending. As she tucked Lisa in the quilt, she said, after the last match was lit, the little girl saw her grandmother again. She tried to reach out her hand, but she didn't expect that she would grab her grandmother's hand. It was so warm. She said, Grandmother, I want to be with you. The light from the match gradually extinguished. The little girl leaned against the wall and fell asleep quietly. The next day, people found a frozen little girl curled up in the corner. Everyone pitied her, but in reality, the little girl went to heaven with her grandmother and lived happily ever after. Bam! The lights went off. Yun Shishir placed the fairy tale at the head of the bed. She stood up gently and left the room. In the living room, Mu Yaja had just finished showering. When he saw her coming downstairs, he raised his eyebrows and asked, Lisa is asleep? Yeah. She's asleep. You and Xiao Yichen are still waiting for you to read them a bedtime story. Yun Shishir's hand, which was holding the glass of water, paused. She said weakly, Daddy. Huh? What's the matter, Mommy? I'll have to trouble you with today's bedtime story. Mu Yaja raised his eyebrows and said, Sure. In the bedroom, Xiao Yichen pulled the blanket over himself. He was eagerly anticipating Yun Shishir's arrival. It had been a long time since he heard a bedtime story. He had been thinking about it for so long. However, just as he was anticipating it, Xiao Yichen saw Mu Yaja enter the room with the fairy tale. He was stunned and sat up abruptly. Daddy, why are you here? Why can't it be me? Muyaja said indifferently, your mother is unwell. Today, I will read you a bedtime story. Xiao Chen said awkwardly, I don't want you to tell me. Muyaja snorted. Why? Do you dislike Daddy? Daddy, you don't know how to read stories. No matter how beautiful a fairy tale is, it sounds like a curse to you. Muyaja's voice was too deep, so much so that when he read the fairy tale, it was somewhat out of place. If you don't want to hear it, then I will. Muyaja sat on the edge of the bed and flipped open the storybook. Xiao Chen was disgusted and kicked it open. The father and son were in a mess. Yu had already fallen asleep, but she woke up when she heard the commotion. She reached out and grabbed Xiao Chen's face, rubbing it viciously. Ah! Yu, what are you doing? Be quiet. When Yun Shishir passed by the room, she heard the commotion. Curious, she pushed open the door slightly and took a peek. She saw the father and son throwing pillows at each other and arguing fiercely. Xiao Chen, in particular, was red in the face from Muyaja and Yu's joint attack. You two are shameless. 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 I'll fight it out with you. Pfft. These three rascals. Muyaja was too much. He was an adult, but he was arguing with two children. Chapter 3687. The next day. Yun Shishir brought the three kids to the mall. Besides buying some daily necessities, she also brought Lisa to buy some clothes. When Lisa arrived, she didn't have any clothes on. Now, she was wearing Xiao Chen's clothes. According to the measurements, Xiao Chen's clothes fit her perfectly. Her clothes were too big and Yu's clothes were too small. Yun Shishir bought a lot of princess dresses for Yueyao. Muyaja had also bought some for her, but they were still too small for Lisa. Lisa was very tall and was almost as tall as Xiao Chen. It was Lisa's first time shopping in a mall. There was a dazzling array of counters and all kinds of dresses and clothes. It was a dazzling sight. Xiao Chen suddenly stopped in front of a children's clothing store. Mommy. This is the store. Yun Shishir and Lisa stopped to take a look. Lisa's face turned red. Why are they all dresses? They look quite nice. They do look nice, but they don't suit me. Lisa had never worn a dress before, so she was a little conflicted about it. Yun Shishir grabbed Lisa's hand and pulled her into the store. Try it on. Before Lisa could say anything, Yun Shishir dragged her into the store. Yu and Xiao Chen followed closely behind. Xiao Chen was especially enthusiastic about choosing clothes for Lisa. This one is good. And this one. Mommy, look. Lisa stood in the fitting room uneasily. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. She asked, who is it? It's me. It was Yu's voice. Lisa opened the door and saw Yu holding a dress in his hand. He handed it to her. Try it on. I picked it out. Lisa's face turned even redder, but she didn't reject him. She took the dress from him and locked the door. After changing into the dress, she didn't dare to open the door and walk out. She kept tugging at the hem of the dress because she felt that it was too low. She felt a little awkward. She felt uncomfortable walking in the dress. Outside the door, Yun Shishir asked, Lisa, are you done changing? Yes, then come out. Hearing her say so, Lisa could only brace herself to open the door and walk out. However, just as she stepped out, she vaguely heard a few gasps, and for a moment, her scalp went numb. This dress doesn't suit me, eyes. You, on the other hand, but she didn't look surprised. You, on the other hand, sat. You. What happened? You look really good in this dress. Lisa was tall and slim, so it suited her to wear a dress that reached her knees. It made her look classy. The dress was simple, but it was beautiful. It was a white blouse and aqua blue spaghetti strap skirt. The design was perfect. There weren't any extra embellishments, but it made her look gentle and beautiful. Xiao Yichen walked around her in a circle. He couldn't hide the surprise in his eyes. Lisa, I didn't expect you to look so good in a dress. Lisa said, You picked it out. I feel that it's too short. You picked it out. Chapter 3688. Yun Shishir immediately said, Hey, I picked 2 of them. Mommy's choices are the same as mine. Lisa, try them on. Yun Shishir was speechless. She sized up Lisa and then Xiao Yichen. She felt that there was something fishy going on between the 2 of them. Xiao Yichen seemed to be very passionate about Lisa. Could it be, was this the boy's first awakening of love? It seemed like there was something going on between them. Lisa carried the dress into the fitting room. After a while, she changed into a new dress. She opened the door and walked out. Her expression was not as unnatural as before. It was as if she had gotten used to wearing dresses. However, she still felt a little uncomfortable. The dress that Xiao Yichen had picked was brighter. It was made of organza and had pink embellishments. There was a circle of organza roses at the hem of the dress, making it look as if it had been born from a sea of flowers. There were no other embellishments. Lisa looked like a little princess in the dress. What do you think? Xiao Yichen looked at Yun Shishir expectantly. I picked this dress. Does it look good? Yun Shishir nodded. It looks good. Lisa is a clothes hanger. She looks good in everything. Yu said indifferently, it's too gaudy. It doesn't look as good as the one I picked. Little Yichen did not buy it when he heard that. What do you mean by gaudy? That's how girls should dress. If Lisa wears it, she'll look like a little princess. Won't she look beautiful? I don't think so. It doesn't look as good as the one just now. Narcissist. Anyway, Lisa looks good in everything. Lisa's lips twitched when she heard this. She felt like laughing. The 2 of them could even bicker over the dress selection. She really had to hand it to them. Why don't you try the one I picked? Yun Shishir smiled. I picked the dress that came in a set. All right. Lisa entered the fitting room again. Not long after, she changed her clothes and came out again. Even Yu's gaze couldn't help but change. It had to be said that Yun Shishir had been in the fashion industry for so many years, and her taste was incomparable to the 2 little guys. She had chosen a dress with elements of Han Chinese clothing. It had a light purple sleeve with black trimmings. It was pure and feminine. It had a matte purple inner garment and a pure white skirt. It had elements of Han Chinese clothing, Hu Jiangli and Pai Jishi, and Yu Qiulan and Wei Pei. The jacket was buttoned with a standing collar, and the collar panel echoed the belt. The cuffs are lantern sleeves with decorative lace and intertwining ribbons. There were embroidery details on the collars, and double-sided embroidery on the waistband. It was so beautiful that it was out of this world. Even Yu, who was used to having a discerning eye, felt that the dress, which had elements of traditional Chinese clothing, was perfect on her. Very beautiful. Xiao Yichen was also mesmerized. He felt that Lisa was so beautiful that she seemed to be glowing as she stood there. So beautiful, the shop assistant couldn't help but praise, your daughter looks so good in this dress. Yeah. She's prettier than children's clothing models. With so many people looking at her, Lisa felt increasingly uncomfortable. She held the corner of her dress and lowered her head, not daring to look up. Lisa, take a look around. Xiao Yichen said. Lisa held the corner of her dress and didn't move at all. Don't make things difficult for her. Lisa isn't used to wearing dresses anyway. Not used to wearing dresses? The shop assistant was a little surprised. It's a pity that such a beautiful girl doesn't wear dresses. I have a daughter who loves to wear dresses. She imagines herself to be a little princess. Chapter 3689. Yun Shishir smiled. That's right. Daughters are more precious these days. Xiao Yichen heard this and felt unlucky. Isn't it good to have a son? A son is also very considerate. The staff was amused by Xiao Yichen's wittiness. This is your son, right? Yes, didn't you see? They're twins. They look exactly the same. The taller one should be the older brother. So cute. Good genes. The staff suddenly looked at Yun Shishir with a twinkle in her eyes. I suddenly feel that you look familiar. Yun Shishir raised her eyebrows. Even though she was wearing sunglasses, her facial features were still there. Upon closer inspection, the staff immediately noticed some clues. You're Yun Shishir. The one who acted in Lethal Beauty. I can't be wrong. I didn't look carefully just now, so I didn't recognize you. I've seen a few of your works. The Green Apple, Lethal Beauty, and Extreme Youth. I've seen them all. When the group of people heard that there was a big celebrity, the other staff members who were busy with their own work quickly gathered around. Yun Shishir was surrounded in an instant. Lisa had never seen such a big scene before. She was so shocked that she stood rooted to the ground. She was a little surprised and asked, "What's going on?" "Mommy is a big celebrity, so I was recognized." Celebrity? For example, movies, television series, actors. Lisa still didn't quite understand. She had never watched a movie before and basically had no contact with entertainment. Xiao Yichen asked, "Do you never watch movies?" Lisa didn't understand. What exactly is a movie? Xiao Yichen crossed his arms and gently rubbed his chin. Half an hour later, Yun Shishir stood outside the theater with the three little guys. She held 3 movie tickets in her hands. However, because it wasn't a holiday, there weren't many people watching the movie. Lisa doesn't even know what a movie is. I want to take her to watch a movie. Xiao Yichen leaned against the window and stared at the title of the movie on the electronic screen. What should I look at? What style does Lisa like? Yun Shishir asked. Lisa shook her head. I'm fine with anything. Yu was naturally the least interested one. She sat in her seat with bags of various sizes and held a cup of Coke in boredom. Yun Shishir glanced at him and felt gratified. Yu loved cola the most. This had never changed. Xiao Yichen suddenly said, "Mommy, didn't you make a guest appearance in a movie called Amnesia Labyrinth? How about an animated movie?" Yun Shishir continued, "There's a Disney movie that came out recently, and the reviews are pretty good. I want to watch Amnesia Labyrinth." "Mommy, what are you acting in it?" Yun Shishir thought for a moment and said, "I think it's a mystery movie. I heard that I won an award for it." "What award?" "Best Female Lead." After a pause, Yun Shishir said angrily, "Also, I'm not a guest star. I'm one of the main leads. It's just that I don't have as many scenes as the male lead." Amnesia Labyrinth was a high-quality mystery movie. It had to be said that Yun Shishir's eye for screenplays was getting better and better. This film had won many important awards. There was no mystery genre in the country, but this film had appeared out of nowhere and shattered everyone's expectations. Chapter 3690. It turned out that there were also high-quality detective films in the domestic market. They had high box office sales and a good reputation. Yun Shishir played the female lead, Yu Qing, in this detective film. Her brother was suspected of being the murderer. She firmly believed that her brother was not the murderer. She worked with the detective played by Hua Jin to solve the case. In the end, they found out that the real murderer was her twin sister, Yushi. In the ending, Yushi was identified as the murderer. It turned out that a year ago, Yushi was sexually assaulted by a few seniors in school. Unexpectedly, she was pregnant. She did not dare to tell anyone until she had a miscarriage when she was 6 months pregnant. She locked herself in the bathroom. When her brother, Yu Xian, and Yu Qing came back, the bathroom wall was covered in blood. Yushi was lying in a pool of blood, unconscious. With hatred in her heart, she started to take revenge and created this serial murder. In order to cover up her crime, Yu Xian threw the stone himself. In fact, the real murderer was Yu Shi. However, when the police arrived, Yu Qing was handcuffed. The character she was playing was a double identity disorder. Yun Shishir was a little surprised. She remembered that when she first took on this movie, she had to play a double identity disorder. However, there were not many cases of double identity disorder in the world. Therefore, she had to figure it out herself. She did not expect that the person closest to her, her son, would also have a double identity disorder. Let's watch Amnesia Labyrinth, then. Xiao Yichen bought 4 tickets and waited for the movie to enter the theater. After the movie started, the 4 of them entered the theater. At this time in the afternoon, there were not many people in the theater. Moreover, the movie had been screening for more than a month and the box office was almost full. Therefore, the screening rate gradually decreased. In a few days, the movie would stop screening. Xiao Yichen was very excited. After all, he rarely watched movies and rarely saw his mother's movies on the big screen. Therefore, he was full of anticipation for this movie. In the opening scene of the movie, the female lead, Yu Qing, played by Yun Shishir, was in the dark. She opened her eyes and saw a pool of sticky blood. She turned around and was shocked to find a corpse. Just as she was about to scream, a hand covered her mouth from behind, and she fainted at once. When she woke up again, she found herself lying in bed with her younger sister, Yu Shi, sitting on the edge of the bed. As the plot unfolded, the police received a report that a body had been found on the embankment of the river. A serial murder case gradually surfaced. The plot was intertwined and the scenes were brilliant. There were no superfluous special effects, but the rhythm was just right. Yu Qing had amnesia. Parts of her memory palace were often missing. Yun Shishir remembered the scene clearly. When she left the library and returned to the dormitory, she realized that the sky had suddenly darkened. When he left the library, it was still morning. However, when he stood at the entrance of the dormitory and looked up again, the sky had suddenly darkened. After asking her roommates, she found out that today was September 10th. But she remembered reading the newspaper in the library on the morning of September 7th. The memory in between had completely disappeared. Chapter 3691. However, when she passed through a small alley and rushed out of the alley, it was already dusk the next day. Her memory was distorted like a maze. What's going on? Xiao Yichen's curiosity was piqued. It looks like a fantasy film. Yu furrowed his eyebrows but didn't say anything. He suddenly said, "This is a memory loss." Yun Shishir looked at him with a complicated expression. "Do you understand?" "Yes." Yu didn't know the plot and continued, "Mommy's character must have a split personality." Yun Shishir was stunned. The first personality and the second personality don't know about each other's existence. Yu Qing's memory loss isn't actually a case of amnesia. It's just that during that period, her second personality woke up and took over the body. Hence, the first personality didn't have the memory of that period because it was another personality in the body at that time. After a pause, Yu continued, "Actually, I'm guessing that Yu Qing doesn't have a sister. Her twin sister, Yu Shi, is her second personality. Without Yu Shi, the real victim of sexual assault is Yu Qing herself. The murderer she's been looking for is actually herself. Hence, when she committed the murder, the personality in her body was Yu Shi and she didn't know about it at all. Hence, she doesn't know the truth." Yun Shishir widened her eyes in shock. Halfway through the movie, everyone firmly believed that Yu Shi was the real murderer. Without any hints from the plot, Yu could accurately tell the core of the story. That was because Yu really had a split personality. He understood the subtle relationship between Yu Qing and Yu Shi. They were close, but they were enemies. At the end of the movie, in the mental hospital, the male lead, Njia, played by Hua Jin, came to the ward. Yu Qing sat alone on the bed, hugging her knees. He walked into the room and looked at her with heartache. The movie rewound. It turned out that Yushi really didn't exist. Back then, because of the sexual assault, because of the twisted hatred and despair, the originally cowardly Yu Qing developed a second personality. The Yushi she had always seen did not exist. Many times, when she spoke to Yushi, in the eyes of others, it was as if she was talking to the air. Her brother thought that she had suffered too much and was sick. Actually, she wasn't sick. It was just that Yu Qing had always thought that Yushi was her sister and that she really existed. Back then, the one who was sexually assaulted and had a miscarriage in the bathroom wasn't Yushi, but herself. The opening scene of the movie was when she switched from her second personality to her first personality. When she woke up and saw the corpse, she was the one who killed it. At that time, her brother happened to return home. When he saw this scene, he immediately rushed over, knocked her out, and personally disposed of the corpse. It was hatred that gave birth to Yushi and his second personality. In the end, Yu Qing finally pulled herself together and killed the second personality with her own hands. In the illusion, she picked up the dagger and stabbed it into Yushi's chest. Yushi disappeared. The second personality disappeared. At the end of the movie, Jia squatted down in front of Yu Qing and hugged her tenderly. Chapter 3692. However, the three little rascals had serious expressions on their faces. Yu Yu suddenly asked, "Mommy, can the second personality really be killed by the first personality?" Then, Yu Yu suddenly asked in a serious tone, "If, and I'm just saying if, the first personality of Yu Yu wakes up in my body and kills me, will your heart ache?" Yun Shishir did not know how to answer. "If I disappear, Mommy, will your heart ache?" Could she bear to do that? Would she miss him? At the end of the movie, Yu Qing redeemed himself. Then, how could he redeem himself? Yun Shishir hugged Yu Yu tightly and her heart ached for him. She suddenly asked, "Why can't they coexist? Just like in the past?" Lisa was nervous when she heard this. She wanted to say something but stopped herself. When the four of them left the cinema, Yu Yu looked a little down. Xiao Yichen saw this and immediately said, "I'll go buy some milk tea." "Mommy, wait for me here." As he spoke, he held Lisa's hand and walked towards the milk tea shop. "Xiao Yichen, why did you choose this movie?" Lisa complained as they walked. Xiao Yichen felt wronged and said, "I've never seen this movie before. I don't know what the plot is." Lisa frowned when she heard this. Her expression was a little solemn. "We can't let this drag on. It's better to put an end to it." "How do we put an end to it?" Xiao Yichen said angrily, "Are we going to let you use two personalities kill each other? That's too cruel. There's no other way. It's impossible for two personalities to coexist. Sooner or later, he won't be able to take it." "Not necessarily. In the past, you used two personalities coexisted. The situation you mentioned didn't happen either. It's different now." Lisa continued, "In the past, Yu's second personality had always been suppressed by her first personality. Now, the second personality is in complete control, and the first personality is being suppressed very much. The two personalities have never coexisted before, and only one of them can suppress the other. Can you imagine Yu's two personalities coexisting?" Xiao Yichen was stunned. "Perhaps, it will really be like in the movies." Lisa frowned and said, "Sooner or later, both personalities will collapse. Do you have the heart to do that?" Xiao Yichen was speechless. He suddenly said, "We can't make the decision for Yu. No matter what decision he makes, I will always be by his side." He then said to the waiter, "4 cups of pudding cheese." Lisa was silent for a while. She looked at Xiao Yichen's side profile and said calmly, "Actually, regardless of whether it's the first personality or the second personality, I also hope that Yu's two personalities can coexist peacefully. However, dual personalities are very rare. At the moment, there's no treatment for it. This is a little tricky. What about Alice? Does she not have a way to cure it? This is not a normal illness, so it can't be treated with any treatment. Alice doesn't know how to solve this problem. Xiao Yichen's heart sank when he heard this. Let's not talk about this for now. Xiao Yichen took the milk tea from the waiter and turned to leave. Lisa followed behind him and suddenly thought of something. What if we seal the second personality? We don't have to destroy the second personality. Chapter 3693. Xiao Yichen's heart ached as he said, "It's the most painful thing to be trapped in a cage all day." When Lisa heard this, she frowned but did not say anything in the end. There was no such thing as empathy between people. This was because the needle was not inserted into one's body, so one would not know how painful it was. They were not Yu, so they did not know how painful it was for a person to be divided into two opposing personalities. When the four of them reached home, Yu locked himself in his room. Xiao Yichen wanted to follow him in, but he realized that the door was locked. Yu, he knocked on the door gently. Yu's cold voice came from inside the room. I want to be alone. Xiao Yichen retracted his hand. Lisa walked over and said softly, let him be alone. But, he was like this when he was on Ashland Island. Sometimes, he likes to lock himself in his room and isolate himself from the world. Xiao Yichen sighed. It was dark in the study room. The curtains blocked all the windows, so no light could pass through. Yu lay on the sofa and looked at the ceiling. Then, he slowly closed his eyes. When he closed his eyes, the world became quiet and still. He imagined himself walking into a door. With a creak, the door slammed shut. Yu looked up and saw a cage in the empty dark room. Inside the cage was a child. This child had the exact same face as him, except that his face was excessively haggard. Yu walked to the door of the cage and looked down at him. Suddenly, he squatted down and looked at him expressionlessly. The child sensed the movement and looked up slightly. However, when he saw Yu's face, his pupils contracted violently. He pounced on the door of the cage and grabbed onto Yu's clothes tightly. Let me out. Yu frowned slightly. He knew that the child in front of him was his other self. He was Yu's first personality. Back then, Alice's hypnosis tried to seal Yu's memories. However, she did not expect that she would accidentally awaken his second personality. The two personalities clashed violently. Yu's second personality tried to kill Yu's first personality. However, the second personality was wrong. He did not know that the first personality would never be killed. Although the second personality was in control of the body, he knew that sooner or later, this body would be replaced by the first personality. And he, too, would be like an abandoned, worn-out doll, sealed in a corner with dust. Or he would be killed by the first personality. She wants to see you very much. Yu looked at the child in the cage and said, in the end, I can't replace you. Sooner or later, you will take back control of this body. What doesn't belong to me will not be mine. You are the real Yu, and I am just a substitute that can't be considered a substitute. After a pause, Yu said calmly, but before that, give me some time, okay? Yu in the cage looked vigilant. What do you want? Yu did not want to say anything. Chapter 3694. What? Return the body to him. The child in the cage was shocked. Yu stood up and curled his lips into a smile. He turned around and left the dark room. When he woke up from his conscious world, Yu opened his eyes and suddenly stood up. He walked to the floor-to-ceiling window and gently drew the curtains. At this moment, the sun was shining brightly. He seemed to have made up his mind. He clenched his fists and did not release them for a long time. At the Gu residence. Xiao Bao leaned against the door and looked around. In the bedroom, Chu Ho sat in front of the dressing mirror. Two makeup artists surrounded Chu Ho. One was in charge of doing Chu Ho's hair, and the other was doing the foundation on Chu Ho's face. At the side, long gowns were hanging in the wardrobe, waiting to be tried on. Gu Jinglian stood in front of the wardrobe and compared a few gowns. He was obviously hesitant. Xiao Bao tried to sneak in several times to peek, but he was kicked out by Gu Jinglian. The pitiful little guy could only lean against the door and peek. The makeup artist had just finished the foundation. She held Chu Ho's chin and looked at her. No matter how she looked, she was envious. Your facial features are so good. You look good no matter how you do it. They were in charge of trying on Chu Ho's makeup. The wedding was imminent, but Chu Ho did not seem to care about it. If Gu Jinglian had not forced her to take a day off, she did not know how long she would have delayed it. President Gu, do you think the bride should wear a Chinese gown or a Western one? Chu Ho turned to look at the wardrobe and saw all kinds of different styles of gowns. There were different styles of wedding gowns, not to mention the Chinese dragon and phoenix gowns and the Han and Tang imperial gowns. Just the 7 to 8 meters long phoenix tail alone made her scalp tingle. Chu Ho asked carefully, do I have the right to decide? Gu Jinglian did not even look at her. What do you think? There shouldn't be any. All right. Chu Ho shrugged helplessly and sat down obediently. Gu Jinglian picked up a dragon and phoenix robe and imagined it. Then, he made a solemn decision. Chinese style. Alright, how about I put on some peach blossom makeup? The peach blossom makeup paired with the dragon and phoenix robe was absolutely stunning. Coupled with Chu Ho's exquisite foundation, she must be very beautiful. Gu Jinglian didn't know anything about peach blossom makeup, so he said, I only look at the effect. Alright, the makeup artists were trembling with fear, afraid that they would miss anything. When Gu Jinglian got married, the makeup artists he hired were all high-end and expensive. Of course, when the two makeup artists came to try on his makeup, Gu Jinglian also tried to be polite before resorting to violence. If you don't look good, don't stay in this line of work. How terrifying. When they were first assigned the task, they did not expect that it would be to test the makeup of the Gu family's young master's fiancé. They thought that if they did not look good and offended the Gu family, they might not be able to continue in this line of work. Therefore, they put on makeup seriously and meticulously. Just the foundation makeup alone took an hour. Even when they used a magnifying glass to look at it, they could not see a single pore. A person's potential was indeed limitless. With the help of the supernatural makeup skills, Chu Ho looked at herself in the mirror. Although she only put on a layer of foundation makeup, she looked like a flawless porcelain doll. Her skin was creamy and even more delicate than a baby's skin. Just the loose powder alone was spread on 2 layers. Then, it was time for the eye makeup. Chapter 3695. Gu Jinglian walked over to take a look, only to see that they were only at the eye makeup stage. He pursed his lips in displeasure and said, why is it so slow? The makeup artists were trembling. Was it slow? Wasn't it all for the sake of looking good? Furthermore, it takes this long for a woman to put on makeup. Gu Jinglian asked suspiciously, does it take that long? Of course. Chu Ho was a little impatient. Get out. Gu Jinglian's face darkened when he heard this. Why should I get out? What are you doing here while I'm putting on makeup? Aren't you just here to see the effect? I'll let you have a look when the makeup is done. The makeup artist added, it takes a long time to put on makeup. After the makeup is done, we still have to wait for the hair to be tied up and for the gown to be changed. It won't be too late for you to have a look when the makeup is done. With such a big devil in the room, they didn't even have the courage to fight. Gu Jinglian was chased out of the room. Xiao Bao, who had been peeking at the door, bumped into Gu Jinglian. The father and son looked at each other. Xiao Bao laughed gloatingly. Ha ha ha. Dad, you've been chased out too. Gu Jinglian said proudly, what do you mean by chased out? Although, it was similar to being chased out. However, it was too embarrassing to be ridiculed by Xiao Bao. Thud. Gu Jinglian couldn't take it anymore and punched the little guy. At this moment, Uncle Fu carried a very heavy box to the master bedroom. Gu Jinglian saw him and couldn't help but ask, what are you carrying? The box was red and gaudy. He didn't know what Uncle Fu had brought back. Uncle Fu said, "Oh," and quickly said, "These are things for the wedding room." Xiao Bao got excited when he heard that they were going to decorate the room. "What are they?" "Balloons, ribbons, silk ribbons, and some lights." Xiao Bao got even more excited when he heard this. He pestered Gu Jinglian and said, "Dad, let's decorate the wedding room together, okay?" Gu Jinglian snorted. "Lame." When Xiao Bao heard this, he lowered his head in disappointment and looked at him pitifully. Seeing that Gu Jinglian was being arrogant again, Butler Fu immediately pretended to have a sore back and said bitterly, "Old master, my back is hurting again. Help me carry these things to the master bedroom." Seeing this, Little Treasure volunteered, "Let me carry you, let me carry you." "No, Dad's Gu Jinglian's father." Gu Jinglian glanced at him, walked over, and carried the box in his arms. Butler Fu relaxed a lot and said to Gu Jinglian, "One person isn't enough. Old master, you can be my assistant." "All right." He had wanted to wait at the door and wait for Chu Ho to finish his makeup so that he could see how beautiful his bride was. However, looking at the situation, he was afraid that the makeup wouldn't be done in such a short time. Thus, Gu Jinglian carried the box and went to the master bedroom with Uncle Fu and Xiao Bao to decorate. The stylists finally heaved a sigh of relief when the footsteps outside the door left. Chu Ho yawned. Her lips twitched when she heard their sighs of relief. "What's the matter? Why are you sighing?" The stylists looked at each other cautiously and immediately crowded around her. "Bride, do you know that many stylists in the capital don't dare to take on this business? Why wouldn't they dare to take on it?" Chapter 3696. Because the man you're marrying is Gu. Young Master Gu. They did not even dare to call him by his name. Chu Ho's eyebrows twitched. What's wrong with Gu Jinglian? Seeing that this bride did not seem to have any awareness at all, they could not help but gasp. "Bride, do you know how scary your man's reputation is in Beijing? There's a saying in the business world that one would rather offend the Mu family than the Gu family. After all, the Gu family is from the underworld." Chu Ho felt that they had demonized Gu Jinglian too much. Actually, Gu Jinglian is not as scary as you make him out to be. The Gu family is also not as scary as you think. At least after interacting with them, Chu Ho felt that other than Gu Jinglian, everyone in the Gu family was quite easy to get along with. Perhaps there was no difference between the underworld and the underworld. She felt that the Gu family was like the chivalrous warriors of the underworld in ancient times. They had a heroic style, straightforward and single-minded. In fact, they were quite simple people. That was Gu Jinglian. He's just a little eccentric. Actually, he's not as scary as you think. The few of them looked at each other, still on tenterhooks. I've always felt that marrying a man like young Master Gu requires a lot of courage. Chu Ho looked at herself in the mirror and did not say much. Although the makeup process was very boring, she did not like to talk too much about her personal matters with outsiders. She knew very well what kind of person Gu Jinglian was. She also knew very well what kind of man she was marrying. Since she had decided to get married, she had already mentally prepared herself for what would happen after the wedding. However, she could not see through Gu Jinglian. If the decision to get the marriage certificate was purely for Xiao Bao, then why was Gu Jinglian holding the wedding now? Originally, Chu Ho had said that the wedding would be simple. There was no need for a big show or a grand wedding. They just needed to go through the procedures. However, Gu Jinglian said, "How can my wedding be casual?" It had to be said that Gu Jinglian was quite particular. Either they didn't have a wedding, or they had to have a grand wedding. Anyway, the Gu family was not short of money or manpower. No matter what, they could not lose to the Mu family in this wedding. At the very least, they had to be on par with the Mu family. He was a typical male chauvinist. Even if he treated others unfairly, he would never treat his woman unfairly. Mu Yaja had held such a grand wedding for his wife. How could his woman be wronged? Even though Chu Ho felt that there was nothing wrong with a simple wedding, Gu Jinglian felt that it was a once-in-a-lifetime wedding, so it couldn't be done so carelessly. Uncle Fu also came over to persuade her, saying that this was the only wedding in a woman's life. No matter what, it had to be done properly. Chu Ho was afraid of trouble, so Uncle Fu immediately patted his chest and promised that she would not have to worry about the wedding. There are so many people in the Gu clan, do you still need to worry about them? When the time comes, you just have to sit there, put on your makeup, put on your gown, and follow the procedure. Chu Ho only agreed after hearing this. Once she agreed, Uncle Fu started to get busy. First, he started to think about whether the wedding would be Chinese or Western. Chapter 3697. It was up to Chu Ho whether she should wear a wedding gown or a dragon and phoenix gown. However, Chu Ho said that it did not matter. Uncle Fu immediately agreed that they should just go with the tradition. After walking around the hotels, Uncle Fu was not satisfied with any of them. After picking and choosing, he felt that no high-end hotel was as pleasing to the eye as the Gu residence. Hence, they decided to hold the wedding at the Gu residence. It had to be said that the Gu residence was really big. It was not a problem to hold dozens of tables in the courtyard. The guest list was drawn up. There would be 10 people at each table, but there would only be about 50 tables. Those who came were close friends who had business dealings with the Gu family. Those who had received invitations from the Gu family were all honored guests. After the wedding venue was confirmed, the tricky problem was, in a normal wedding, the woman would be married out of the bride's house. However, Chu Ho did not have a maternal family. This was a big problem. Without a maternal family, where was the best place to get married? The group of people was worried. Uncle Fu usually stayed at the Gu residence, but he also had houses in other places. Uncle Fu suggested that the woman could get married out of his house. Anyway, Chu Ho's household register is under my name. No matter what, she can be considered half a daughter. Since she is already married, she can treat my house as her maternal family and get married out of my house. When Gu Jinglian heard this, he also felt that this was a good idea. Uncle Fu's house was not far from the Gu residence. It was about 10 kilometers away. Chu Ho did not care about anything, as if she was a hands-off shopkeeper. After all, she did not know the rules of a wedding, so she simply left it to Uncle Fu to handle. In the master bedroom, Xiao Bao was holding a balloon and blowing it. The balloon was expanding bit by bit. However, he did not dare to blow it up too much, for fear that it would explode if the balloon was too full. Here. Uncle Fu, tie a knot. Xiao Bao handed the pitifully small balloon to Uncle Fu. Uncle Fu took a look and clicked his tongue. This balloon is too small. It won't do. What happened? Look at how big the balloon in your father's hand is. Xiao Bao looked at the balloon in Gu Jinglian's hand and saw that the balloon that Gu Jinglian had blown up with the air pump was 10 times his size. What a big balloon! Gu Jinglian said disdainfully, your balloons are useless. Why? I can't fly. How is this possible? Xiao Bao threw the balloon in his hand toward the ceiling, but he didn't expect the balloon to fall down so quickly. What happened? Xiao Bao looked dejectedly at the balloon in Gu Jinglian's hand. He tied a ribbon to it and rolled the ribbon with the back of his knife. He gently loosened the ribbon and the balloon floated up to the ceiling. The balloon was filled with hydrogen, and Xiao Bao directly blew it with his small mouth. Naturally, it couldn't float. I also want to use this thing to fight. Xiao Bao pointed at the air pump. Uncle Fu suddenly said, Xiao Bao, shall we compete? Let's see who blows the balloon bigger. When Xiao Bao heard that they wanted to compete, he nodded his head vigorously. Hence, Xiao Bao and Uncle Fu each took a balloon and blew it vigorously. Gu Jinglian glanced at it and suddenly laughed sinisterly. He placed a deflated balloon behind Xiao Bao and started blowing it with the air pump. Xiao Bao was focused on the balloon and didn't know that the balloon behind him was getting bigger and bigger. Uncle Fu was shocked when he saw this. He saw Gu Jinglian holding the air pump and pumping it vigorously. The balloon was getting bigger and bigger. There was a sound. Chapter 3698. The balloon exploded at once. The balloon exploded behind Xiao Bao. The huge commotion frightened Xiao Bao so much that he jumped up from the bed. He was so shocked that he loosened his grip. The air in the balloon immediately escaped and poured into Xiao Bao's mouth. Xiao Bao was stunned as he drank the balloon's air. He loosened his grip and the deflated balloon immediately flew out. It flew around the room and fell to the ground. When Gu Jinglian saw Xiao Bao's intense reaction, he burst out laughing. Ha ha ha. Xiao Bao still did not understand what was going on. He turned around and looked at the remains of the balloon on the floor. Then he looked at the air pump in Gu Jinglian's hand and suddenly understood what was going on. You did it on purpose. Xiao Bao stood up and pointed angrily at Gu Jinglian. He was so frightened that his eyes turned red. Gu Jinglian's face returned to its cold and indifferent expression. No, you're just a coward. You, Xiao Bao pounced at Gu Jinglian angrily. He picked up the balloon on the floor and hit it at Gu Jinglian's head. Gu Jinglian grabbed the balloon from Xiao Bao's hand and hit it at his head. Thump, thump, thump. Thump, 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 Xiao Bao's head was hit quite a few times. The father and son wrestled together and started fooling around. Uncle Fu did not know whether to laugh or cry, but it was nothing. As the father and son played around, Uncle Fu minded his own business and hit the balloon. After more than an hour, someone knocked on the door. Master Gu, the bride's makeup is done. When Gu Jinglian heard this, he said, Oh. When Xiao Bao heard this, he was extremely excited. I want to take a look. Xiao Bao nimbly got up from the ground. When Gu Jinglian saw this, he reached out his large palm and clasped Xiao Bao's head, pushing him to the side. He stood up himself and walked towards Chu Ho's room. Xiao Bao also followed. The father and son walked to the door of the room. From afar, through the crack of the door, they saw a dazzling red. It was incomparably dazzling. Gu Jinglian's eyes immediately focused. Xiao Bao pushed the door open and saw Chu Ho standing in front of the full-length mirror. He was wearing a long dragon and phoenix robe. Just by looking at his back, one could see that he had a magnificent bearing. His 7 to 8 meter long phoenix tail spread out in a long stretch. Gu Jinglian was stunned. The beautiful scene in front of him made him forget what he should do for a moment. Chu Ho was very tall. Hence, the long dragon and phoenix robe made her body look even more well-proportioned and slender. She was incomparably tall and slender. She wore a golden phoenix coronet on her head. Beautiful tassels hung down to her temples. Her exquisite makeup and seductive eyes were like silk. Especially the fiery red flower between her brows and her red lips, she was dazzlingly beautiful. Even though Chu Ho had a good foundation, even without makeup, she was much more beautiful than the average woman with makeup. However, there was still a big difference between makeup and no makeup. Thick black eyelids, thick and long eyelashes, a perfect amount of blush, fair and translucent, delicate and smooth skin, it was actually a stunning sight. Wow! So beautiful. Xiao Bao walked over carefully, trying not to step on Chu Ho's phoenix tail. Gu Jinglian also came back to his senses and walked into the room. Chu Ho's back was facing him. She was still looking at the mirror and examining her makeup. Even she herself was stunned by her flawless makeup. It was too beautiful. This was not makeup, it was simply a disguise. Chapter 3699. So beautiful. So beautiful. Xiao Bao jumped around Chu Ho. She was breathtaking. Gu Jinglian stopped behind Chu Ho. He calmed himself down and suppressed his emotions. Pretending to be calm, he said, "Turn around and let me have a look." When Chu Ho heard this, she did not expect Gu Jinglian to be there too. She turned around in surprise. However, when she turned around just now, the sunlight in the room was overshadowed in an instant. The whole room seemed to be enveloped by the light emitted from her body. Chu Ho's fair and flawless face was filled with shades of black, red, pink, and white. The black was naturally due to her thick black eyeliner and her curly eyelashes. The pink was due to her pink cheeks. The blush was just right. It was neither too bright nor too plain. Her high nose bridge and bright red lips made her look as graceful as jade. Her bearing was extraordinary. She had a noble and compelling aura that could not be looked directly at. Gu Jinglian's Adam's apple bobbed slightly as he stared fixedly at her. Even his heart stopped beating, afraid that he would disturb her beauty. Chu Ho saw that he was staring at her motionlessly and felt a little uneasy instead. What's the matter? Do I look good? She was not confident in her own taste in beauty. When she looked at herself in the mirror earlier, she felt that this outfit was quite beautiful. She did not know how Gu Jinglian would look at it. Hence, she asked this question to test his opinion. After her test, Gu Jinglian finally came back to his senses. He was a little startled as he grunted, however, in Chu He's eyes, his hesitation due to his stunning beauty seemed to be hesitation and reluctance to force an answer. If you don't think I look good, just say so. She was obviously not satisfied with his reaction. At least, she did not see amazement in his eyes. Gu Jinglian said awkwardly, "Didn't I say that I look good? Look at how reluctant you are to answer. No one forced you." Gu Jinglian frowned. Before he could say anything, Xiao Bao jumped up and down beside Chu Ho and said with a smile, "Mommy is the prettiest. If Daddy doesn't think she's pretty, then it's Daddy's fault. Anyway, Xiao Bao thinks she's pretty. Why don't Mommy marry Xiao Bao?" Gu Jinglian's face immediately turned green. What nonsense was this little fellow spouting? Although this child's words carried no harm, but at such a young age, he actually had ideas about his woman. Xiao Bao obviously did not notice Gu Jinglian's darkening expression behind him. Chu Ho could not help but laugh. "Even if she marries you, she'll have to wait until our Xiao Bao grows up." Xiao Bao tilted his head. "When will Xiao Bao grow up?" "When Xiao Bao grows up, I'll be old too." "Mommy will never grow old. Even if Mommy grows old, Xiao Bao won't despise you." Gu Jinglian's eyebrows twitched. This son of his was really good at sweet-talking. Chu Ho said lightly, "Someone is not as good as his own son when it comes to sweet-talking." Gu Jinglian snorted disdainfully. The stylist beside him said uneasily, "President Gu, are you satisfied with this one? Do you want to try something else?" Without waiting for Gu Jinglian to speak, Chu Ho complained, "Isn't this headdress too heavy? It's making my neck sore." Chapter 3700. However, the headwear on Chu Ho's head was made of genuine gold. Hence, it had a certain weight to it. It was no wonder that his neck was sore from the weight. Gu Jinglian said, "I'll take this. It looks pretty good. You don't have to try anything else." Chu Ho was a little unhappy. "Can you change the headwear? This is too heavy. This dragon and phoenix gown should be paired with this kind of headwear. Only then will it have the most aura. Anything else will be a little cliché," the stylist added. Chu Ho sighed and gave in. "All right, I'll take this one." Chu Ho turned back to the dressing mirror and said to them, "Since we've decided on this gown, let's change out of it. It's uncomfortable to wear it. Of course, the nicer the gown, the better. It'll definitely be uncomfortable. However, this is a once-in-a-lifetime wedding. It'll be a precious memory if it's grand." Gu Jinglian was about to walk out of the room when Chu Ho said faintly, "Who said this is a once-in-a-lifetime wedding? Who knows, maybe I'll have a second one." These words undoubtedly ignited a gunpowder keg. Gu Jinglian turned around abruptly and said coldly, "I dare you to say that again." Chu Ho said indignantly, "Fine, I'll say it again. Who said this is a once-in-a-lifetime wedding? Who knows, maybe there'll be a second or third one." Gu Jinglian's expression became even uglier. This woman was clearly provoking him. When the stylist saw this, she immediately tried to smooth things over. "Yes, of course there'll be a second or third one. Before she could finish speaking, Gu Jinglian heard this and became even more displeased. The few of them who didn't know how to read a person's mood actually agreed. The stylist saw that Gu Jinglian's expression had suddenly turned ugly. She quickly explained, in the future, when it's your 40th or 50th wedding anniversary, you can also hold a ceremony. For example, a silver wedding, a golden wedding, and even a diamond wedding. Gu Jinglian frowned. There's such a thing. Chu Ho snorted coldly. There's a lot of things to say. It's said that there are proposals before marriage, but I've never seen anyone take the initiative to propose. Ah, Master Gu didn't propose to you? The stylist asked cautiously. Chu Ho nodded. No. Gu Jinglian walked up to her and sized her up. He raised his eyebrows and asked, do you want to propose to me? Chu Ho crossed his arms in front of his chest, but did not express his opinion. Gu Jinglian was in the same position as her. He crossed his arms and looked at her. How do you want me to propose? It's too late to propose now. As Chu Ho spoke, he turned to look at the dressing mirror and removed the gold ornaments on his head. The stylist immediately said, it's not too late to propose now. As long as it's before the wedding, the proposal will count. Generally speaking, when proposing, the man should kneel down on one knee and prepare some romantic surprises. Gu Jinglian's expression was slightly gloomy. Kneel? Gu Jinglian narrowed his eyes. You need to kneel to propose? Proposing, as the name suggests, is to ask the woman to marry you, Chu Ho said again. This is what you call a proposal. Kneeling down on one knee is to show your sincerity. Gu Jinglian smiled. Dream on. Seeing this, Xiao Bao suddenly said, I've seen how they propose on TV. He found a jewelry box from somewhere and held it in his hands. He knelt down on one knee sincerely and said sincerely to Chu Ho, beautiful lady, I swear to God that I will love and protect you for the rest of my life. May I ask if you will marry me? Bang. Chapter 3701. Xiao Bao's head was about to explode. Gu Jinglian grabbed him by the ear and gritted his teeth. Do you want to die? Xiao Bao hugged his head and mumbled with reddened eyes, Daddy is bullying me, yes, I'm beating you up. Gu Jinglian pulled him by the ear and dragged him out of the door. Let's go. Xiao Bao whimpered as he was dragged out by Gu Jinglian. They bickered as they walked out. Daddy, you're too violent. I wonder if you'll bully Mommy in the future if I hand her over to you. Shut up. As a man, you have to be gentle with women and children. Don't you understand this? Bam. It was another knock on the head. Ugh, talk more nonsense and I'll twist your head off. Bam. The door slammed shut. Chu Ho stared blankly at the sound of the father and son leaving. After a while, he came back to his senses and burst out laughing. What a pair of clowns. Gu Jinglian carried Xiao Bao into the bedroom. At the same time, Uncle Fu had already pulled up the curtains. The bed was a large, antique bed with carved flowers. With the red curtains as embellishments, it looked as if they had returned to the ancient times. There were also a lot of balloons that floated to the ceiling. At a glance, the originally old-fashioned room looked a little more romantic. Gu Jinglian threw Xiao Bao onto the bed like a ball and handed him a bunch of balloons and an air pump. He instructed, fill the balloons with air. Xiao Bao asked righteously, how do I get paid? 1 yuan per balloon. That's too cheap. Xiao Bao threw the air pump away. I'm not doing it. Suddenly, there was the sound of footsteps outside the door. The door was pushed open and Lin Shi walked in with her school bag. I'm back from school. Before he could finish his sentence, Gu Linshi's eyes widened in surprise when he saw the decorations in the room. Oh my God, it's so beautiful. Uncle Fu walked over and took Lin Shi's bag. Lin Shi, you're home. Do you have homework today? I finished it in school. Lin Shi saw a balloon on the bed and walked over. He picked it up and looked at it. He then looked at the balloon on the ceiling and asked, do you need help? Uncle Fu nodded. Yes, we're lacking manpower right now. Alright, I'll do it. Lin Shi obediently sat down on the edge of the bed, picked up the air pump, and studied it for a while. Soon, he understood. After a while, he shot 3 or 4 balloons, tied them to a ribbon, and floated to the ceiling. Gu Jinglian snorted and scolded Xiao Bao, "Look at how obedient your brother is." Xiao Bao pointed at him and complained, "Daddy uses child labor." Bang! A knock was heard. Xiao Bao said tearfully, "Daddy is abusing children." Bang! A knock was heard. Gu Jinglian said coldly, "You dare to say that again?" Xiao Bao looked at his tightly clenched fist and retreated in fear. Gu Jinglian had just put down his fist when Xiao Bao said indignantly, "Daddy is a super bad guy." Gu Jinglian slowly turned around. Wah! The room was shaking. Even though they were a room apart, Chu Ho could hear the commotion in the master bedroom. He only heard Xiao Bao's cries. Then, there was dead silence. Gu Jinglian, this guy, he must be bullying our son again. Chapter 3702. Putting on makeup took a long time, but removing it was very fast. After the stylists removed Chu Ho's makeup, they did a series of skincare treatments for her. "Your skin condition isn't very good," the stylists said as they applied a facial mask for her. "Do you usually take care of your skin?" "I don't." "Don't you use skincare products?" "I don't." Oh my god, the stylists looked at each other in dismay. "If you don't take care of your skin at all, it's really unbelievable that your skin is in such a state." Chu Ho said, "I usually only wash my face with water. I don't really use facial cleanser." "Actually, your skin condition is very young. Compared to other girls your age, your skin condition is very good. It's just that you don't hydrate your skin and it's a little dehydrated. After putting on makeup, it will be very dry. How about this? We'll give you a few facial masks. You can apply them every night." Chu Ho took the facial masks and looked at them. She didn't know what brand they were, but since they were recommended by professional stylists, they should be effective. "Okay, thank you." Before she could finish speaking, the stylists gathered in front of her with dazzling smiles on their faces. They revealed extremely sincere expressions and said in an almost begging tone, "If Master Gu asks about today's service, please give us full marks. Otherwise, if Master Gu isn't satisfied, we're done for." So, they gave her the facial masks to bribe her. Worried that she wasn't satisfied with their service, Gu Jinglian asked about it and offended them. "Okay, I got it." The stylists immediately thanked her profusely and looked as if they couldn't wait to kneel down and kowtow to her. After they packed up their cosmetics and left, they looked like they were about to shed tears of gratitude. Chu Ho was a little confused. Was Gu Jinglian that scary? Looking at them, they looked like they were about to cry. Chu Ho put the skincare products they gave her into the drawer and walked to the master bedroom. When she opened the door, she saw Lin Shi and Xiao Bao playing around with balloons on the bed. Uncle Fu was putting up flowers for the window. She glanced around and saw Gu Jinglian sitting on the sofa, cutting paper. Looking at the room again, it was already more than half decorated. The red curtains were draped over the bed, and the bright and clean windows were pasted with the word, "Shi," on the window. These window flowers were probably the work of Gu Jinglian. Chu Ho looked surprised. "You know how to cut paper?" When Gu Jinglian heard the voice, he raised his head and saw that it was Chu Ho. He subconsciously threw paper cut to the side and said softly, "I don't know how to." When Xiao Bao saw this, he immediately got up from the bed and shouted, "Daddy, cut it." He refuses to admit it because he feels ashamed. Gu Jinglian glared at him fiercely. Xiao Bao was so scared that he immediately shut up. Uncle Fu had just finished putting up a piece of window decoration. When he saw Chu Ho, he immediately smiled and said, "Actually, Master is the most enthusiastic about decorating the bridal chamber. He looks indifferent on the surface, but in fact, so many things about the wedding are planned by him." "Uncle Fu." Gu Jinglian stopped him. "Shut up. Don't talk too much. When Chu Ho heard this, his lips curled into a smile. He laughed and said, "You still feel embarrassed. However, I seem to have heard someone say that he doesn't care about the wedding and just leaves it to others. I didn't expect someone to be so attentive to the wedding. It looks like he's looking forward to the wedding." Gu Jinglian's handsome face immediately turned red. Chapter 3703. Chu Ho asked again, "Then who cut these window trimmings?" Gu Jinglian made a prompt decision. "Uncle Fu." Uncle Fu and Xiao Bao said in unison, "Old master cut them." "Dad cut them." Gu Jinglian was speechless. Chu Ho clutched her stomach and laughed. "Ha ha ha. Why didn't you come up with a confession before lying?" Gu Jinglian suddenly got up and left the room with a gloomy expression. After he left, Xiao Bao and Lin Shi looked at each other and burst out laughing. Uncle Fu was also speechless. Old master is two-faced. He has a sharp tongue but a soft heart. He obviously did it with his heart, but he still won't admit it. Lin Shi added, "There's a saying that goes, you'll suffer if you want to keep up appearances. I think Dad really wants to keep up appearances." Xiao Bao nodded heavily. That's right, that's right. Dad is so awkward." Chu Ho looked disgusted, but in fact, she felt warm inside. In fact, how could she not know that these window trimmings were cut by Gu Jinglian? She was asking the obvious. She knew that other than Gu Jinglian, no one else could cut such beautiful window trimmings. Chu Ho walked to the table and casually picked up the window trimmings that Gu Jinglian had cut. She looked at them carefully. The trimmings were neat and the texture was simple. She could tell that Gu Jinglian had carefully cut them out bit by bit with a knife. Chu Ho couldn't help but smile. Her fingertips gently caressed the half-trimmed window trimmings. At night, Gu Jinglian sat in the study. As usual, he took a shower and read a book before going to bed. Chu Ho walked to the study after her shower. She saw Gu Jinglian sitting at the study table. She smiled and walked over. Gu Jinglian heard the footsteps, but he did not look up. He continued to hold the book and read it carefully. However, on the surface, he could not read a single word. He did not turn a page for a long time. Chu Ho stood behind him. She followed his gaze and looked at his book. Even after she had finished reading, he still did not turn the page. "You're such a meticulous reader." He paused for a moment before continuing, "Did you read it word by word?" Gu Jinglian finally looked up and glanced at her, but his eyes were extremely deep. Chu Ho snatched the book from his hand and turned a page. She was about to walk to the sofa and sit down to read it seriously when Gu Jinglian suddenly reached out his arm and wrapped it around her waist, pulling her into his arms. Chu Ho was caught off guard and fell into his arms. She looked up and met Gu Jinglian's deep eyes. Gu Jinglian lowered his head and stared at her face. His gaze sized her up inch by inch. His slender fingers gently caressed her cheek. Her skin was exquisite and flawless. It felt unexpectedly good to the touch. Gu Jinglian suddenly lowered his head and kissed her gently on the lips. For some reason, he wanted to kiss her. However, unlike other men, he did not kiss her impatiently. At first, he only kissed her lips lightly. He kissed her bit by bit but was not in a hurry to go deeper. Chu Ho instinctively pushed his shoulders away. His kiss was too sudden. She was not even mentally prepared for it. However, no matter how much strength she used, Gu Jinglian did not budge. No matter how hard she pushed, he did not move at all. He was like a boulder. "What are you doing?" Her face was slightly red and her eyes were angry. Chapter 3704. "I'm kissing you." After Gu Jinglian finished speaking, his thin lips pressed down on hers again. This time, the kiss was much gentler. He gently covered her lips with his, sucking on her lips and rubbing them gently. It was so gentle that Chu Ho gradually got used to this kiss and did not resist anymore. She looked up and saw Gu Jinglian's deep eyes. On the window, there was the bright red word, "she." She seemed to be able to imagine what it would be like on the day of their wedding. However, she could not imagine what it would be like on the day of their wedding. What kind of clothes would he be wearing, walking in front of her and holding her hand? On that day, would he still be as serious as usual with a meticulous smile on his face? Or would he say one thing and hold her hand disapprovingly, as indifferent as he had always been? She could not imagine it. She had not even thought that she would have such a day. To be able to become husband and wife with such a man. When she first heard the name, Gu Jinglian, besides feeling unfamiliar, there was also an inexplicable hostility. This name resounded like thunder in the ears of the Interpol. As a spy by his side, she had more contact with this man and gained a deeper understanding of him. He was ruthless, cruel, and unscrupulous. He could always casually force his opponents into a desperate situation and leave calmly. At that time, she would never have thought that she would become his wife a few years later. She still remembered that this man had made it clear that he would not marry and have children like other men. She did not expect that they would have such a cute and obedient son, Xiao Bao. She also did not expect that she would hold a wedding with him. Gu Jinglian, Chu Ho suddenly spoke. Yes? Do you really want to marry me? Gu Jinglian raised his eyebrows. Why are you suddenly asking this question? Didn't you say before that you would never get married in this lifetime? Chu Ho continued, don't tell me that our wedding is just a game to you. Or is it just compensation for Xiao Bao? Gu Jinglian's eyes flickered. He looked away but did not answer immediately. Chu Ho held his face and forced him to turn his head to look at him. He asked again, marriage means that you will be together for the rest of your life. Are you willing to spend a lifetime with me? Gu Jinglian pursed his thin lips, unable to speak. Chu Ho was a little annoyed. Are you sincere in wanting to be with me? Of course. Then, Chu Ho finally asked the question in his heart, do you like me? She didn't dare to talk about love. She also didn't dare to imagine that a proud and arrogant man like Gu Jinglian would tie his life to a woman. However, even if it was just a little bit, this love was much deeper and heavier than the love of other men. Gu Jinglian stared at her for a while and suddenly asked, do you like me? He asked with an awkward expression. When Chu Ho heard this, he smiled and said, I like it. She decided not to hide it anymore. Perhaps the initial decision to settle down in the Gu family was purely to give Xiao Bao a home. Chapter 3705. However, after getting used to life in the Gu residence, Chu Ho realized that she had some special feelings for the Gu family. These feelings were too subtle. If one was not serious, it would not be easy to notice. The feeling of home. The warmth of home. This feeling was unprecedented. Even though she still did not accept Gu Jinglian wholeheartedly and only regarded him as Xiao Bao's father, a family member, but not a husband. However, during that trip to North Africa, she ignored all dangers and sneaked into North Africa to find Gu Jinglian. She shuttled between gunfire. At the border of life and death, hell on earth. Only then did she realize that she had to reevaluate her feelings for Gu Jinglian. Did she love him? Did she like him? If she did not love or like him, then why did she risk her life just to find him? Was it purely for Xiao Bao? Did she not want Xiao Bao to lose his biological father? Could she not bear to see Xiao Bao suffer the pain and injury of being separated from his flesh and blood? But more than once at night, she asked herself if she would still go to North Africa and look for Xiao Bao if it were not for him. The answer was, yes. Even if she faced death, she would find him and bring him home. Although she had never liked a man and had never been in any relationship, she did not know what it felt like to like and love someone. Her understanding of love was that she could not leave and did not want to leave. She liked him. She must have liked him. Otherwise, why would she risk her life for such a man? Chu Ho recognized her feelings and her heart. Therefore, when Gu Jinglian asked her, she admitted that she liked him. She had always dared to love and hate. She did not adhere to the eternal rules of men who should take the initiative and women who should be reserved. She liked him. It was a fact that could not be changed. She just said that she loved him. There was nothing to hide. In this life, one should not make a choice that they would regret and say something that they would regret. If they said it and did it, then they would not regret it. I like you. Chu Ho smiled calmly. Gu Jinglian, listen carefully. I, Chu Ho, like you. Even though he had hurt her, he had also given her joy. Love, no hate. When Gu Jinglian heard this answer, he was slightly startled, but he smiled. He understood her character. She was open and honest, and did not hide her feelings at all. She was straightforward and natural. This was also one of the reasons he liked her. What about you? You haven't answered me yet. Chu Ho raised his eyebrows. I don't want you to marry me. The ceremony is just for Xiao Bao's feelings. If you like me, you like me. If you don't like me, you don't like me. You're not even afraid of death. Don't you have the courage to answer this question? Gu Jinglian asked, is the answer really that important? Of course. When Gu Jinglian heard this, he laughed. He was the same as Chu Ho. When he was young, the cold environment he grew up in had created a cold personality. He was also very indifferent to relationships. He had developed a character that would not give up until he achieved his goal. He had had many women, but Chu Ho was the most special one.